Hi there, friends. Thanks for tuning in to Monkey DFIC. Get ready for an incredible journey as we present what if Luffy and Roger existed in the same era. If you find our stories entertaining, a simple like and subscribe would mean everything to us. Your support motivates us to create more. Here we go. Chapter 1, Echoes of Legend. The thousand sunny cut through the waves like a dream, spray flying from its lion figurehead as it approached the shores of Astartea Island. The morning sun glinted off the ship's vibrant hull, casting golden reflections across the water. Luffy perched on his special seat atop the figurehead, sandals hooked behind him and his trademark straw hat secured firmly on his head despite the strong breeze. His eyes sparkled with excitement as the island's famous port city came into view. Woohoo! We made it! Luffy shouted, pumping his fist into the air. I can smell adventure from here. Nami stood at the helm, consulting her maps with a critical eye. Astartea Island, known for its annual pirate festival. Supposedly it commemorates some big battle Roger won here years ago. Roger? Luffy spun around, nearly tumbling from his perch. Like, the Roger. Joel D. Roger. The very same, Robin replied, closing her book as she joined them at the railing. According to the local histories, Roger and his crew saved this island from a marine occupation about 15 years ago. They've celebrated him ever since, much to the world government's frustration. Zoro grunted from where he was napping against the mast. Sounds like our kind of place. There's shops too, right? And restaurants? Nami asked, eyes turning to Barry signs. I've heard they have some of the finest seafood markets in the Grand Line, Sanji called from the galley doorway. I could stock up on some rare ingredients. Usopp lowered his telescope with a nervous swallow. Guys? You might want to see this. The harbor's packed with marine ships. Marines? Chopper squeaked, hiding the wrong way behind the mast. Luffy's grin only widened. This is gonna be fun. The harbor bustled with activity as their ship approached. Colorful banners stretched between buildings, depicting a stylized version of Roger's face with his famous mustache and wide grin. Street performers juggled and danced along the boardwalk while vendors hawked commemorative trinkets and authentic pirate memorabilia. We should probably dock somewhere less obvious, Nami suggested, eyeing the marine vessels with concern. There's a cove on the eastern side, Frankie said, adjusting their course. Super hidden from the main harbor. They navigated around the island's edge, finding a secluded inlet sheltered by towering cliffs and lush vegetation. As the anchor dropped, Luffy was already stretching his arms to the shore, rocketing himself onto the beach with his characteristic laugh echoing behind him. That idiot, Nami sighed. He'll get us all caught. I'll go after him, Zoro volunteered, strapping his swords to his hip. You'll get lost, Sanji retorted, lighting a cigarette. I'll find him. What did you say, Cook? As the inevitable argument broke out, Robin chuckled softly. I think we should all go. The festival sounds fascinating, and we need supplies anyway. 20 minutes later, the crew made their way through the dense forest toward the city, following the sounds of celebration. Luffy had predictably vanished ahead of them. Do you think the rumors about Roger are true? Chopper asked, trotting alongside Robin. That he's looking for the One Piece right now? Hard to say, Robin replied. The world government keeps most news about him suppressed. We only hear fragments and legends. The Pirate King, Usopp mused. Imagine if we actually ran into him here. Don't be ridiculous, Nami said. What are the odds that we'd? A massive explosion rocked the city ahead, sending a plume of smoke into the sky. Find Luffy already in trouble, she finished with a groan. They broke into a run, emerging from the tree line to find the city in chaos. People scattered in all directions as Marines clashed with what appeared to be local defenders in the town square. And at the center of it all, stretching his rubber arm back for another devastating punch, stood their captain, laughing as he sent Marines flying. Gomu Gomu no. Pistol. Luffy shouted, his fist connecting with a marine lieutenant's face, sending the man crashing through a festival booth. That moron couldn't stay quiet for 5 minutes, Zoro grumbled, but his hand was already drawing Wado Ikamanji as he rushed forward. The Straw Hats leapt into action, falling into their familiar combat roles. Zoro cut through marine weapons with precise slashes while Sanji's flaming kicks launched soldiers into the air. Nami summoned storm clouds with her climb attack as Usopp provided covering fire from a rooftop. Robin's multiple arms bloomed across the battlefield, disarming marines with elegant efficiency while Chopper bounded between his forms, alternately healing injured townspeople and throwing marines into the harbor. Frankie's mechanical enhancements whirred and clanked as he cleared whole sections of the square with sweeping attacks. A group of civilians huddled behind an overturned cart watched the spectacle with wide eyes. "Who are these guys?" one whispered. "That flag on their ship, it's the Straw Hat Pirates. The rookie crew that's been making waves. What are they doing here?" An elderly man among them stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Fighting just like he did, all those years ago." Luffy landed next to the cart, knocking back 2 marines with a sweeping kick. He glanced at the old man. "Hey, old-timer. What's going on here? Why are the marines attacking?" "They're trying to shut down our festival," the old man replied. "Every year they come, and every year we resist. This celebration honors the man who freed us. Roger, right?" Luffy grinned. "He sounds awesome. He was, yes. The greatest pirate who ever lived. They say he's still out there, searching for the ultimate treasure." The old man's eyes gleamed. "The Marines hate that we keep his legend alive." A new wave of Marines flooded into the square, led by a stern-faced commander with medals gleaming on his chest. "Straw Hat Luffy," the commander bellowed. "Your presence on this island is a crime. Surrender now." "Nah." Luffy picked his nose casually. "We just got here, and I'm hungry." The commander's face reddened. "You're just like all the others who worship that demon Roger. Don't you know what happens to pirates who follow in his footsteps?" "Yeah." Luffy's face split into his signature wide smile. "They have adventures." With that, he launched himself into the new group of marines, arms whirling like windmills. Gomu Gomu no storm. The battle intensified as more marines poured in from the harbor. Despite holding their own, the Straw Hats found themselves gradually pushed back toward the center of the square. "There's too many," Usopp called out, firing a pop green that sprouted into a wall of tangling vines. "We need an exit strategy." "The eastern tunnels," the old man shouted to Luffy. "Below the clock tower. They'll lead you to safety." Luffy nodded, stretching his neck to call to his scattered crew. "Everyone! To the clock tower." They fought their way across the square, providing cover for the civilians while making their retreat. As they reached the ancient stone tower at the edge of the plaza, Robin noticed faded carvings around its base. "These symbols," she murmured, fingers tracing the worn patterns. "Later, Robin." Nami grabbed her arm, pulling her inside as Frankie and Zoro barricaded the heavy wooden doors behind them. Inside, the old man from the square was waiting, now joined by several other elders of the town. They stood around a circular stone in the floor, which one of them was already lifting to reveal a dark passage below. "Quickly," the old man urged. "These tunnels date back centuries. They'll take you beneath the city to the northern cliffs." "What about all of you?" Chopper asked, concerned. "Don't worry about us," a woman with silver-streaked hair replied. "The Marines won't harm us, they need the townspeople's cooperation to maintain the base here. They just want to stop the festival, and capture any pirates. Especially ones making names for themselves," added another elder. "Like you, Straw Hat. Your bounty's been rising fast." Luffy beamed with pride, but Nami dragged him toward the tunnel. "Thanks for your help," she said to the elders. Before you go, the old man called, reaching into his robes. I think you should have this. He pulled out an aged piece of parchment, yellowed at the edges and covered in strange markings. What's this? Luffy asked, taking it curiously. A map, the man replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. One that Roger himself was searching for when he was here. It leads to something powerful, something many have sought but none have found. Robin peered over Luffy's shoulder, her historian's eyes scanning the ancient text. These markings, they're similar to those on the tower outside. The Marines attacked today not just because of the festival, the woman explained. They learned we had this map. We've protected it for years, but perhaps it's time for it to find its way into the right hands. The sound of battering rams against the tower doors emphasized their urgent situation. We'll figure it out later, let's move. Frankie urged, already descending into the tunnel. One by one, the straw hats climbed down the stone steps into darkness. Luffy paused at the entrance, looking back at the elders. Thanks, old-timers. I'll make sure this map thing gets used for something awesome. The old man smiled. I believe you will. You remind me of him, you know. Roger? Yes. That same spark in your eyes. The old man glanced nervously at the shuttering doors. Now go. Luffy grinned once more before dropping into the tunnel. The elders quickly replaced the stone cover above them, just as the Marines broke through the tower entrance. The tunnels wound beneath Astertia like ancient veins, occasionally opening into wider chambers with crumbling stone architecture. Usopp's firefly stars provided just enough illumination as they navigated the labyrinth. These passages weren't built recently, Robin observed, examining the walls. The stonework suggests they're at least several hundred years old. Who cares how old they are as long as they get us away from the Marines? Usopp replied, jumping at the echo of his own voice. Nami studied the map they'd been given, frowning in concentration. I can't make sense of these markings. Robin, can you read any of this? Robin took the parchment, holding it up to the light of Usopp's stars. Some of it resembles ancient scripts I've studied. This section here appears to indicate a location in the New World, but these symbols. She traced her finger along a series of intricate patterns. These are unlike anything I've seen before. So it's a mystery map. Luffy declared cheerfully. Leading to a mystery treasure. Not helping, Luffy, Nami sighed. They continued through the tunnels for nearly an hour before Zoro, who had somehow ended up at the front of the group despite starting at the rear, called back to them. I see light ahead. The passage gradually sloped upward, eventually opening onto a ledge high on the northern cliffs. Below them, the ocean stretched to the horizon, and to their right, partially hidden in a natural cove, the Thousand Sunny waited. Perfect. We made it back to the ship, Nami said with relief. Now we just need to, halt, a voice commanded from above. The straw hats looked up to see Marines positioned on the cliff tops, rifles aimed down at them. At the center stood a tall, imposing figure with white-streaked black hair and a face lined with old battle scars. That's far enough, pirates, the man said, his deep voice carrying easily on the sea breeze. Who's this guy? Luffy asked, already bouncing on the balls of his feet, ready for another fight. The man's coat bore the insignia of a Marine admiral, though none of them recognized him. Admiral Zephyr, Robin murmured, eyes widening slightly. I've heard rumors, a tactical genius who's dedicated his life to eradicating pirates. Zephyr surveyed them with cold efficiency. Monkey D. Luffy. 300 million berries. Roronoa Zoro. Nico Robin. Black Leg Sanji. The Straw Hat Pirates. His gaze settled on Luffy's hat. That straw hat, how interesting. What's so special about my hat? Luffy asked, one hand protectively touching the brim. Zephyr's mouth curved into a humorless smile. It once belonged to red-haired Shanks, did it not? And before him, to Gold Roger himself. Luffy's eyes widened slightly. He knew Shanks had worn it, but Roger. Shanks had never mentioned that. Hand over the map, Straw Hat, Zephyr continued, and I might consider letting your crew leave this island alive. What map? Luffy replied innocently. Zephyr sighed. Don't play games. The elders gave you the chart of Poseidon, a map that Roger himself sought years ago. The world government has been hunting it for decades. Poseidon. Robin's interest was visibly piqued. One of the ancient weapons. The map leads to a key, Zephyr explained, his patience clearly wearing thin. A key that could unlock power beyond your comprehension. Now, hand it over. Luffy looked at the map in Robin's hands, then back at Zephyr. His answer came without hesitation. Nope. Zephyr's face hardened. Then you leave me no choice. Men, open fire. As rifles discharged in unison, Luffy inflated himself to bounce the bullets back while Zoro and Sanji leapt into action, scaling the cliff face to engage the Marines directly. Frankie raised his arms, fingers retracting to reveal his weapon systems. Frankie rocket launcher. Explosions rocked the cliffside, creating chaos among the Marine ranks. In the confusion, Nami turned to the others. We need to get to the ship. Now. They began making their way down the steep path toward the cove, fighting Marines at every turn. Robin, still holding the map, suddenly found her path blocked by Zephyr himself, who had jumped down from above with surprising agility for his size. That map belongs to the world government, he stated flatly, reaching for it. Multiple arms bloomed from his body, twisting his own limbs in unnatural directions. Clutch! But Zephyr barely flinched, breaking free of her hold with raw strength. Devil fruit users, he grunted. So predictable. He moved with unexpected speed, his fist connecting with Robin's midsection before she could react. She gasped, dropping to one knee as the map fell from her grasp. Robin! Luffy shouted, abandoning his own fight to rocket toward them. Zephyr snatched up the map, but before he could secure it, a stretching rubber arm wrapped around his wrist. Give that back. Luffy demanded, pulling himself forward for a direct confrontation. Zephyr met his charge head-on, his free hand hardening with what appeared to be armament hockey. Their collision sent shockwaves across the cliff face, dislodging rocks that tumbled into the sea below. You're out of your depth, boy, Zephyr growled, pushing Luffy back. You're nothing but a rookie playing at being a pirate. I'm going to be king of the pirates. Luffy shot back, undeterred. Zephyr's laugh was cold. You. There are 100 others with the same dream, including Roger himself. What makes you special? Because I'm me. Luffy declared, as if it were the most obvious answer in the world. He stretched back both arms, twisting them together. Gomu Gomu no. Rifle. His spinning fist caught Zephyr in the chest, finally seeming to have some effect as the Admiral slid back several feet. Zephyr looked down at the point of impact with mild surprise. Not bad, he conceded. But not good enough. What followed was a brutal exchange of blows, with Luffy using his rubber abilities to their fullest while Zephyr countered with disciplined hockey techniques. The rest of the crew was occupied with the remaining Marines, unable to assist their captain. During the fighting, the map changed hands multiple times, eventually tearing in half. Luffy ended up with one portion while Zephyr secured the other. Fall back. Zephyr finally ordered his men, clutching his half of the map. We have what we need for now. As the Marines retreated, the Straw Hats regrouped around Luffy, who was breathing heavily from his confrontation with Zephyr. Are you okay? Chopper asked, already examining Luffy's injuries. Yeah, I'm fine, Luffy replied, staring at the torn piece of parchment in his hand. But we only got half the map. Robin took the fragment, studying it carefully. Even with half, there might be enough information here to Her words were cut short by a new commotion from the direction of the harbor. The distant sound of cannon fire echoed across the water, followed by shouts and the clash of weapons. Now what? Nami groaned. Frankie, using his mechanical eye to zoom in on the harbor, whistled low. We've got company. Big company. More Marines? Zoro asked, still catching his breath. Nope, Frankie replied, a hint of awe in his voice. Pirates. And not just any pirates. That ship flying into the harbor, it's the Oro Jackson. A stunned silence fell over the crew. The Oro Jackson? Usopp repeated, voice cracking. As in, G.O.L.D., Roger's ship. Luffy's face broke into an enormous grin. Awesome. Let's go see. Before anyone could stop him, he had stretched his arms to a distant tree and catapulted himself in the direction of the harbor. Luffy, they shouted in unison, but he was already gone. The harbor of Astertia was in complete chaos. The arrival of the Oro Jackson had sent the marine forces into a frenzy, with battleships moving to intercept while smaller vessels attempted to evacuate. Civilians crowded the docks and rooftops, many cheering at the sight of the legendary pirate ship while others fled in terror. The Oro Jackson itself was a magnificent vessel, larger than most pirate ships and flying its infamous Jolly Roger proudly, a traditional skull and crossbones wearing a captain's hat. Its crimson hull gleamed in the afternoon sun as it cut through the water with purpose, seemingly unconcerned by the marine forces marshalling against it. Luffy landed on a warehouse roof overlooking the harbor, eyes wide with excitement. The rest of his crew arrived minutes later, having raced through the city to catch up. Are you insane? Nami hissed, grabbing his vest. That's Roger's ship. We need to get out of here before, look at it. Luffy interrupted, pointing enthusiastically. It's so cool. And look who's on the deck. They followed his gaze to see figures moving on the Oro Jackson. Even at this distance, some were immediately recognizable from their wanted posters and legends: Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King, directing the ship's approach; Skoppergaban, wielding his massive battle axes against a marine boarding party; Crocus, the ship's doctor, calmly mixing something in a bowl despite the battle raging around him. And at the bow, a tall figure in a captain's coat, his mustache unmistakable even from afar. G.O.L.D. Roger, Robin breathed, a historian's reverence in her voice. The Pirate King himself, Sanji added, cigarette hanging forgotten from his lip. They watched as the Oro Jackson engaged multiple marine vessels simultaneously. Roger's crew moved with the precision of veterans, each member knowing their role perfectly. Where the Straw Hats fought with youthful energy and improvisation, the Roger pirates displayed the confidence of a crew that had sailed together for decades. They're incredible, Zoro admitted, studying their swordsmanship with a professional eye. But what are they doing here? Usopp wondered. What are the chances they'd show up at the same time as us? Robin held up their half of the map. Perhaps they're after this as well. Before they could discuss further, a new vessel entered the harbor from the opposite side, a sleek black ship flying a flag none of them recognized, a skull with a crown of thorns. Who's that? Chopper asked. Their question was answered moments later when Marines on the docks began shouting a name: Captain Mordred. It's Mordred's crew. The black ship opened fire, but its cannons targeted both the Marines and the Oro Jackson indiscriminately. Figures leapt from its deck onto the docks, engaging anyone in their path. This is getting complicated, Frankie observed. Three-way battle royal. Luffy's attention, however, remained fixed on Roger. He watched as the legendary captain single-handedly repelled a marine boarding party, moving with incredible speed and power. Even from this distance, Luffy could sense the overwhelming presence Roger projected, a charisma and strength that commanded the entire harbor. I'm going over there, Luffy announced suddenly. What? His crew exclaimed in unison. I want to meet him. Luffy insisted, already stretching his arm toward a distant mast. Luffy, wait. Nami called, but too late. With his characteristic shishishi laugh, Luffy launched himself across the harbor, soaring over battling marines and pirates alike. His trajectory, however, wasn't quite perfect. Instead of landing on the Oro Jackson, he crashed into the middle of the dock where Roger himself was engaged with a group of elite marines. Luffy tumbled to a stop just feet away from the Pirate King, who paused mid-fight to regard the unexpected arrival with raised eyebrows. "Sorry about that." Luffy grinned up at him, scrambling to his feet. "Bad landing." Roger's eyes widened slightly as he took in the young pirate, particularly the straw hat perched on his head. A flash of recognition crossed his face, quickly replaced by amusement. "That hat." Roger began, but was interrupted by a marine officer charging from behind. Without looking, Roger backhanded the attacker with enough force to send him flying into the water. His attention never left Luffy. "Nice hat, kid," he said with a grin that matched his wanted posters. "Where'd you get it?" "Shanks gave it to me." Luffy replied proudly. "It's my treasure." Whatever Roger might have said next was cut short as a massive explosion rocked the harbor. Both pirates turned to see Admiral Zephyr standing atop a marine battleship, holding what appeared to be a den mushy connected to detonators throughout the port. "Roger." "Straw Hat." Zephyr's voice boomed across the water. "This ends now." More explosions followed, severing sections of the dock and sending debris raining down on ships and people alike. In the chaos, a group from the Black Ship, Mordred's crew, made a coordinated rush toward Roger, weapons drawn. Without hesitation, Luffy moved to intercept them, his fists flying as he cleared a path away from the collapsing dock. "This way," he called to Roger, as if the Pirate King needed his help. To Luffy's surprise, Roger laughed, a full, genuine laugh, before following his lead. Together, they fought their way through the converging forces, each matching the other's pace as if they'd fought side by side for years. "You've got guts, Straw Hat." Roger called over the din of battle. "What's your name?" "Monkey D. Luffy," he replied, stretching his leg in a wide sweep that cleared a dozen attackers. "The man who's gonna be king of the pirates." Roger's laugh grew even louder. "Is that so? There can only be one king, you know. Then I guess we'll have to figure that out." Luffy shot back with a challenging grin. Their banter was interrupted by a new threat, Captain Mordred himself, a scarred man with a shock of white hair and eyes that burned with hatred fixed directly on Roger. "Roger!" Mordred roared, drawing twin sabers crackling with some kind of energy. 15 years I've waited for this moment. Do I know you?" Roger asked casually, genuinely seeming unable to place the man. Mordred's face contorted with rage. "I was with Rocks. You destroyed everything. And now I'll destroy you." He launched himself at Roger with frightening speed, his blades leaving trails of light in their wake. Roger parried with a sword of his own, the collision sending shockwaves across the dock. Luffy found himself separated from the duel by more of Mordred's crew, led by a woman whose arms transformed into gleaming metal blades. "Captain's busy with Roger," she said with a cold smile. "I'll handle the Straw Hat boy." "I don't have time for this," Luffy replied, cracking his knuckles. "I've got a map to figure out and a pirate king to meet." The woman's smile vanished. "Map? What map?" Before Luffy could respond, the rest of his crew arrived, crashing into the fray with perfect timing. Zoro immediately engaged the Blade Woman, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. "Go help Robin," he called to Luffy over his shoulder. "She found something about the map." Luffy nodded, fighting his way toward where Robin stood at the edge of the dock, defending herself against marines while examining their half of the parchment. As he reached her side, he saw that she had spread the map portion on a barrel, weighing it down with stones while frantically copying the markings into a notebook. "Robin. What's up?" "This map fragment," she replied without looking up. "I've seen these symbols before. They match inscriptions from the Void Century." "Is that good?" It's incredible. And look here. She pointed to a series of marks along one edge. These coordinates point to an island in the New World. If the legends about Poseidon are true, this could lead to. Her explanation was cut short by a dagger that embedded itself in the barrel, nearly piercing the map. They looked up to see Admiral Zephyr approaching, his coat singed and his face set with determination. "Neither of you are leaving with that map," he stated flatly. Luffy stepped between Zephyr and Robin. "Keep working," he told her. "I'll handle this guy." Zephyr drew a blade of his own, a short, black sword that seemed to absorb the light around it. "You're in over your head, boy. You have no idea what forces you're meddling with." "Don't care," Luffy replied simply. "It's an adventure." They clashed again, their battle spilling across the dock as Robin hurriedly completed her notes. Nearby, Roger and Mordred continued their own deadly dance, their weapons moving almost too fast to follow. The harbor had become a chaotic three-way battlefield, Marines, Roger's crew, and Mordred's forces all fighting for dominance while the civilian population of Astertia watched from a safe distance, many cheering whenever Roger or his legendary crew members performed particularly impressive feats. In the midst of their duel, Luffy found himself briefly back-to-back with Roger as they fended off attacks from all sides. "That map of yours," Roger said, blocking a Marine's sword thrust. "The old man gave it to you, didn't he? You know about it?" Luffy asked, surprised. Roger grinned over his shoulder. "Been looking for it for years. Heard rumors it was on this island." "We only have half," Luffy admitted. "Some grumpy admiral has the other piece." "Zephyr," Roger nodded. "He's been hunting me for a decade. Never gives up." "What's so special about this map anyway?" Roger parried another attack before answering. "It leads to something ancient. Something powerful. Something that might help find the greatest treasure of all." "One Piece?" Luffy asked excitedly. Roger's eyes twinkled with mystery. "Maybe. Or something even better." Before they could continue, Mordred re-entered the fray, separating them once more. The battle raged on as the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the war-torn harbor. Eventually, Zephyr received a communication on his Den Mushi that caused him to reluctantly order a retreat. The Marines began falling back to their remaining ships, though Zephyr himself continued to fight, unwilling to abandon the field. "This isn't over," he promised, as he and Luffy circled each other. "That map piece will be mine, and you'll never reach the weapon." "We'll see about that," Luffy replied, breathing heavily but still grinning. A whistle cut through the air, a signal from the Oro Jackson. Roger disengaged from his fight with Mordred, leaping with impossible agility onto a stack of crates. "Time to go, Straw Hat," he called to Luffy. "Unless you want to be surrounded when Marine reinforcements arrive." As if on cue, the horizon darkened with approaching battleships, Marine reinforcements responding to Zephyr's call. "Luffy! We need to leave now," Nami shouted, already helping the others make their way back toward where they'd left the Sunny. Luffy nodded, delivering one final punch to Zephyr that sent the Admiral crashing through a warehouse wall. He ran to Robin, who had secured her notes and their half of the map. "Got everything?" he asked. "Yes," she confirmed. "But without the other half." "We'll figure it out," Luffy assured her with unwavering confidence. He looked back to where Roger stood watching them, still atop the crates. Their eyes met across the devastated harbor, the established legend and the rising rookie, and something unspoken passed between them. A challenge. A recognition. Perhaps even a hint of respect. Roger raised a hand in a casual salute before turning to rejoin his crew on the Oro Jackson, which was already maneuvering to depart. "Let's go, everyone," Luffy called to his crew. "Back to the Sunny." As they fought their way clear of the harbor, Luffy couldn't help looking back one more time at the magnificent ship sailing ahead of them. On its deck, Roger stood at the helm, his coat billowing in the wind, every inch the Pirate King of legend. Just you wait, Luffy murmured, his hand instinctively touching the brim of his straw hat. I'm coming for that title. Hours later, safely at sea with Astartea Island fading behind them, the Straw Hats gathered on the Sunny's deck to examine their half of the map and Robin's notes. From what I can tell, Robin explained, this map leads to an island called Valhalla, supposedly home to a key connected to the ancient weapon Poseidon. Ancient weapon? Usopp repeated nervously. That sounds dangerous. All the more reason to find it before the world government does, Robin replied. Or before Mordred gets it. Who was that guy anyway? Frankie asked. Seemed to have a real grudge against Roger. He mentioned being with Rocks, Robin mused. The Rocks pirates were a fearsome crew that Roger helped defeat years ago, alongside Monkey D. Garp. Garp? My grandpa? Luffy perked up at this. Yes. It was the battle that first earned Roger his worldwide fame, the God Valley incident. Sanji lit a fresh cigarette. So this Mordred is holding a grudge from back then. Great. Another powerful enemy. Speaking of powerful, Nami interjected, what did you think of Roger? Was he as amazing as the stories say? Luffy, unusually quiet until now, looked up at the stars beginning to appear overhead. His usual grin was replaced by something more thoughtful. He's strong, Luffy acknowledged. Really strong. And his crew moves like they can read each other's minds. They've been together much longer than we have, Robin pointed out. Yeah, Luffy nodded. But there's something else. When we were fighting together, it felt familiar somehow. Like we're the same, but different. What do you mean? Chopper asked curiously. Luffy struggled to find the words. It's like, he's looking for the same thing I am. Not just one piece, but something else. Something bigger. Freedom, Zoro suggested quietly. Yeah. Luffy's face brightened. That's it. When he fights, when he laughs, he's the freest person I've ever seen. A comfortable silence fell over the crew as they considered this. The Thousand Sunny continued its course under the emerging stars, guided by Nami's expert navigation. So what now, Captain? Sanji finally asked. We only have half the map. The Marines have the other half. We follow our half. Luffy declared, his determination returning full force. Robin can figure out the rest. It won't be that simple, Robin cautioned. But I'll do my best with what we have. And what about Roger? Usopp asked. He's after the same thing. Are we racing him now? Or fighting him? Luffy crossed his arms, his expression unreadable for a moment before breaking into his characteristic wide smile. Neither. We're gonna beat him to it fair and square. And when we do, he'll have to admit I'm gonna be the next Pirate King. The confidence in his voice was so absolute that none of his crew doubted him, despite the seemingly impossible odds. This was Luffy, after all, the man who declared war on the world government, invaded Impel Down, survived Marineford, and never, ever gave up on his dream. All right then, Zoro said with a smirk. To Valhalla Island. To Valhalla, the crew cheered in unison. As they celebrated, none of them noticed the small bird perched on the ship's railing, a messenger bird with a tiny den mushy strapped to its back, transmitting their conversation to a receiver aboard the Oro Jackson sailing several leagues ahead. On that legendary ship, Roger sat in his captain's quarters, listening to the Straw Hats through the snail with an amused smile. Beside him, Silver's Rayleigh raised an eyebrow. Interesting kid, the first mate commented. Reminds me of someone. Roger chuckled, fingering his mustache thoughtfully. That hat suits him. Shanks chose well. Are we really going after this Poseidon key? We're already on the trail of the Poneglyphs. Roger's eyes gleamed with the excitement of adventure. Why not? Sounds fun. And I'm curious about this Straw Hat Luffy. Not every day you meet a rookie who jumps into a fight with a smile like that. Like someone else I know, Rayleigh remarked dryly. Roger laughed heartily, the sound filling the cabin. Set course for the coordinates on our half of the map. Let's see if these young pirates can keep up. Outside, the stars continued to emerge, watching over two pirate ships sailing toward the same destination, one carrying the established king, the other bearing the determined challenger. Between them lay adventure, danger, and perhaps the answers both captains sought, though for very different reasons. And somewhere in the darkness, Admiral Zephyr's fleet and Captain Mordred's vessel also changed course, each with their own designs on the ancient secrets of Valhalla Island. The race had begun. Chapter 2, Parallel Courses. Dawn broke over the Grand Line, painting the endless ocean in shades of amber and gold. The thousand sunny cut through the morning mist, its lion figurehead gleaming with first light. In the crow's nest, Usopp adjusted his goggles, scanning the horizon with growing concern. "They're still following us," he called down to the deck. 6 marine battleships, coming in fast. Nami frowned at their eternal pose, which pointed stubbornly in the direction of their pursuers. "We can't change course without losing our heading toward the coordinates. Then we fight," Luffy declared from his perch on Sunny's head, punching one fist into his palm with a satisfying smack. 6 battleships? Nami shot back. "Are you crazy? They'll blow us out of the water before we get close." Frankie emerged from below deck, wiping grease from his massive forearms. "The coup de burst needs another hour to recharge after that escape from Astertia. We pushed it hard. Then we'll have to outrun them the old-fashioned way," Sanji suggested, already moving toward the helm. Robin stood at the railing, her arms crossed as she used her devil fruit ability to sprout eyes on the pursuing ships. "Admiral Zephyr is leading them personally," she reported. "And they've called in reinforcements. I count 2 more ships approaching from the east." "We're being boxed in," Zoro observed, his hand resting on Wado Ikemanji's hilt. Chopper bounced nervously from hoof to hoof. "What about Roger's ship? Are they being chased too?" "Can't see the Oro Jackson anywhere," Usopp replied, still scanning the horizon. "They must have taken a different route." Luffy stretched his arms high above his head, working out the kinks from sleeping on deck. "I bet Roger wouldn't run from a few marine ships. Roger has decades of experience and a crew of legendary pirates," Nami reminded him. "We need a plan that doesn't involve suicide." The marine ships grew larger on the horizon, white sails emblazoned with the world government symbol billowing in the morning breeze. The lead vessel fired a warning shot that landed 100 yards off their starboard bow, sending up a plume of water that sprayed across the deck. "That wasn't very friendly," Frankie muttered. "They're signaling us to surrender," Robin translated as flags ran up the marine's main mast. Luffy's response was simple and predictable, "No way." The standoff was interrupted by a sudden shout from Usopp. "Ship approaching from the northwest. Fast." All eyes turned to spot a sleek vessel cutting across their path at incredible speed. Its crimson hull was unmistakable even at a distance. "It's the Oro Jackson," Chopper exclaimed. The legendary ship adjusted course directly toward them, seemingly unconcerned by the marine fleet in pursuit. As it drew closer, they could make out figures moving purposefully across its deck, preparing for battle. "Are they going to attack us too?" Nami wondered aloud. Her question was answered when the Oro Jackson's starboard cannons roared to life, but their target wasn't the Sunny. A perfectly coordinated broadside tore into the lead marine vessel, shredding its sails and punching holes along its waterline. "They're helping us," Chopper cheered. Zoro narrowed his eye. "Or clearing their own escape route." The Den Den Mushi on the Sunny's helm suddenly came to life, crackling with a voice they recognized from the battle at Astertia. "Oi, Straw Hat." Roger's booming laugh carried through the snail. "Looks like you could use a hand." Luffy snatched up the receiver, grinning widely. "Roger. I thought you'd be halfway to the treasure by now." And miss all the fun? Never. Roger replied. Besides, we seem to have a mutual problem with our friend Zephyr. You have a plan? Luffy asked. Always. See that narrow passage between the two islands ahead? That's the entrance to the Serpent's Triangle, a maze of currents, reefs, and sea king nests. The Marines won't follow us in there. Nami grabbed the receiver from Luffy. The Serpent's Triangle? That's a death trap. No ship makes it through there. Roger's laugh boomed again. No ordinary ship, maybe. But the Oro Jackson isn't ordinary, and I'm betting your little lion ship isn't either. What do you say, Straw Hats? Brave enough to follow where Marines fear to sail? Luffy reclaimed the receiver, his eyes sparkling with excitement. We're in. Lead the way. Luffy. Nami protested, but she could already see it was useless. When their captain got that look, nothing would change his mind. Full speed ahead. Luffy ordered. Let's show these Marines what the future Pirate King's ship can do. The Thousand Sunny surged forward, following in the wake of the Oro Jackson as both ships raced toward the narrow strait between two forbidding islands. Behind them, the Marine fleet adjusted course in pursuit, cannons firing in staggered volleys that sent up splashes around the pirate ships. They're gaining. Usopp shouted, watching through his goggles as Admiral Zephyr himself appeared on the deck of the lead Marine ship, issuing orders with mechanical precision. Almost to the strait, Frankie called out, his hands steady on the helm. Hold on to something. The Oro Jackson reached the passage first, its expert crew navigating the sudden shift in currents with practiced ease. The Sunny followed, plunging into turbulent waters that seemed to grab at the ship like hungry fingers. What the hell? Sanji exclaimed as the ocean itself appeared to change color, shifting from blue to an unsettling purple-black. The Serpent's Triangle, Robin explained, gripping the railing as the ship lurched. Named for the three islands that form its boundaries and the sea serpent said to inhabit its waters. It's also rumored to be home to unnatural currents that defy the laws of physics. As if to prove her point, the water ahead of them suddenly surged upward, forming a towering wave that curled over itself in a way no natural wave should. Frankie! Luffy shouted. On it! The cyborg spun the wheel hard to port, narrowly avoiding the collapsing wall of water. Behind them, the Marine ships hesitated at the entrance to the strait. All except one, Zephyr's flagship pushed forward, following them into the dangerous passage. Stubborn bastard, Zoro muttered. The Oro Jackson was now several hundred yards ahead, following a course that seemed to anticipate the strange behavior of the currents. Roger's voice came through the den mushy again. Follow our exact path. The triangle has patterns, deadly ones if you don't know how to read them. Nami rushed to the bow, her eyes studying the water with the expertise of a master navigator. Frankie. 5 degrees starboard, then hard to port when I say. The next 10 minutes were pure chaos as both pirate ships navigated the increasingly bizarre waters. The ocean itself seemed alive, forming whirlpools that appeared and disappeared at random, currents that flowed uphill, and waves that moved in spiral patterns. This is impossible. Usopp wailed as a nearby reef suddenly extended like a living thing, nearly impaling the Sunny's hull. No, it's not, Nami replied, her voice calm despite the madness around them. There's a pattern. The water temperature changes just before each anomaly. If we watch for the shifts. She continued calling out directions, which Frankie executed with precision. Behind them, Zephyr's ship struggled against the unnatural sea, falling further behind but refusing to abandon the chase. The marine vessels that had hesitated quickly learned why the Serpent's Triangle had its fearsome reputation. One ship that ventured just inside the boundary was caught in a sudden whirlpool, dragged under so quickly that the crew barely had time to abandon ship. They're not going to make it, Chopper said, watching the marine ships through a spyglass. Good, Luffy replied, his usual cheerfulness hardening slightly. That Admiral guy seems way too interested in our map. The Oro Jackson had slowed, allowing the Sunny to catch up until the ships were sailing side by side through a momentarily calmer stretch of water. For the first time, the Straw Hats got a clear view of the legendary Roger pirates going about their duties. Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King himself, stood at the helm, his silver hair whipping in the wind as he navigated by instinct more than instruments. Skopper Gaban worked with a team managing the sails, his muscular frame making the heavy canvas look weightless. A young, mustache-free Crocus tended to what appeared to be an injured crew member, while other famous faces from wanted posters moved about the deck with practiced efficiency. And at the bow, watching the Thousand Sunny with undisguised interest, stood Joel D. Roger. Even at a distance, his presence was overwhelming, a charisma that seemed to bend reality around him. Luffy shouted across the water, waving both arms over his head. Thanks for the help. Roger's laugh carried across the gap between ships. Don't thank me yet, Straw Hat. We're only at the entrance to the triangle. The real challenge is still ahead. As if summoned by his words, the sea between the ships suddenly erupted as a massive serpentine form broke the surface, a sea king larger than any the Straw Hats had encountered before, its scales the same purple-black as the strange waters. Whoa! Luffy's eyes widened with a mixture of fear and excitement. The Sea King's massive head swung between the two ships, as if deciding which to attack first. It settled on the Sunny, lunging forward with jaws wide enough to swallow the forecastle whole. Gum gum. Luffy inhaled, his body swelling as he prepared a counterattack. Before he could finish, a blur of movement crossed from the Oro Jackson, Roger himself, leaping the impossible distance between ships with a sword drawn. He struck the Sea King mid-lunge, his blade cleaving through scales that should have been impervious to ordinary weapons. The creature recoiled with a shriek that sent waves rippling outward. Roger landed lightly on the Sunny's railing, his coat settling around him as if the laws of physics applied only loosely in his presence. These waters are his territory, Roger explained casually, as if he hadn't just performed an impossible feat, the guardian of the triangle. There are 6 more like him deeper in. Luffy stared at the older captain, momentarily speechless. The rest of the Straw Hats were similarly stunned by the casual display of power. The moment was broken when Zephyr's ship, which had been closing the gap during the calmer waters, fired a cannonball directly at the Sunny's stern. Frankie reacted instantly, positioning himself to take the hit, his metal body absorbing the impact with a grunt. That was rude, Roger remarked, turning to face the marine vessel. He raised his voice to call across to his own ship. Rayleigh. Let's show them why they shouldn't have followed. The Dark King nodded, issuing crisp orders that sent the Oro Jackson swinging around in a tight turn. The legendary ship's cannons adjusted, targeting Zephyr's vessel with precision that spoke of decades of naval combat experience. Wait! Robin called out, studying Zephyr's ship through a spyglass. There's something strange, they're not preparing for battle. They're launching something. A projectile arced from the marine ship's deck, but instead of an explosive, it released a cloud of dark smoke that spread with unnatural speed across the water. What is that? Nami asked, backing away from the railing as the smoke approached. Nothing good, Zoro replied, drawing his swords. The smoke reached the Sunny first, flowing over the railings like a living thing. As it touched the deck, it solidified into humanoid shapes. Marine soldiers formed from the smoke itself, their features indistinct except for glowing eyes and the weapons they carried. Devil fruit, Robin concluded, crossing her arms defensively. Likely a Logia type. Similar smoke creatures were forming on the Oro Jackson, triggering an immediate response from Roger's crew. The battle was joined on both ships simultaneously as the pirates fought against enemies that dispersed into smoke when struck, only to reform moments later. How do we beat these things? Chopper asked, shifting into heavy point to grapple with a smoke marine that kept dissolving through his grasp. If it's a Logia user creating them, Luffy said, his fists hardening with armament hockey, then this should work. He demonstrated by punching a smoke soldier, his hockey-infused fist connecting with solid resistance. The creature dissolved, but unlike the others, it didn't reform. Hockey users, focus on taking them down. Luffy called out. Everyone else, protect the ship. Roger, still standing on the Sunny's deck, nodded approvingly at Luffy's quick assessment. Not bad, kid. You're sharper than you look. Thanks. I think. Luffy replied, not entirely sure if he'd been complimented or insulted. The two captains found themselves fighting back-to-back as more smoke soldiers materialized around them. They fell into a natural rhythm, Luffy's rubber limbs stretching to attack at range while Roger's sword and hockey-infused strikes dealt with anything that got close. Your crew is impressive, Roger commented between strikes. Young, but talented. They're the best. Luffy agreed enthusiastically. Yours is pretty cool too, old man. Roger laughed heartily. Old man. I'm in my prime. If you say so, Luffy grinned, ducking under a smoke soldier's sword before countering with a gum-gum pistol that sent it flying overboard. Across the water, the Oro Jackson was similarly embattled, but the experienced crew was handling the strange attackers with practiced coordination. Rayleigh's hockey-infused sword cut through smoke soldiers like they were solid, while Skopurgaban's twin axes created whirlwinds that disrupted the creature's form. On Zephyr's ship, a slim figure stood beside the admiral, a person wrapped in dark clothing with a featureless mask covering their face. Their hands moved in intricate patterns as they directed the smoke assault. That must be the devil fruit user, Robin observed, pointing out the figure to Frankie, who was manning the cannon. Got it. Frankie aimed carefully, waiting for the ships to align before firing a special round. Frankie. Star. The projectile exploded mid-air above Zephyr's ship, releasing a shower of what looked like golden dust that settled over the vessel. The masked figure recoiled as the particles made contact, and instantly, the smoke soldiers on both pirate ships began to dissolve. Sea stone powder, Frankie explained proudly. Designed to disrupt devil fruit powers temporarily. Been working on it for a while. Nice job. Luffy called out, dispatching the last of the smoke creatures near him. Roger wiped his blade clean before resheathing it. Impressive technology. Your shipwright has talent. Frankie's the best. Luffy agreed. He built the Sunny from scratch. Before they could celebrate further, the sea around them suddenly darkened. The strange currents of the triangle intensified, forming a web of intersecting flows that threatened to tear the ships apart. The triangles responding to the battle, Roger observed, his expression turning serious. It does that, violence attracts its attention. As if to emphasize his point, multiple massive shapes began circling beneath the ships, more sea kings, drawn by the commotion. Roger leapt back to the railing, preparing to return to his ship. We need to move deeper into the triangle before Zephyr recovers. There's an island at the center, we can regroup there. An island? Nami asked. That's not on any of my charts. It wouldn't be, Roger replied with a mysterious smile. It only appears to those who are invited. Invited by who? Chopper wondered. Roger's smile widened. By the triangle itself. With that cryptic remark, he leapt back across to the Oro Jackson with the same impossible agility he displayed earlier. Moments later, the legendary ship's sails filled with wind as it carved a path through the increasingly chaotic waters, following a course that seemed to make sense only to its navigator. Follow them. Luffy ordered, excitement returning to his voice. I want to see this mystery island. If it exists, Nami muttered, but she was already calling out directions to Frankie, who guided the Sunny in the Oro Jackson's wake. Behind them, Zephyr's ship struggled against the currents, falling further behind as the triangle's true dangers began to manifest. The water between the vessels suddenly erupted in a series of massive geysers that twisted like tornadoes, creating a barrier that the marine ship couldn't penetrate. The triangle's cutting them off, Robin observed. Almost as if it's choosing sides. That's ridiculous, Nami replied, though her voice lacked conviction as she watched the unnatural behavior of the sea around them. The next hour tested the limits of both pirate crews and their vessels. The Serpent's Triangle earned its reputation with challenges that defied logic, currents that flowed upward, patches of water that froze and thawed in seconds, and brief, localized rain showers that fell from cloudless skies. Throughout it all, the Oro Jackson led the way, its course seeming random to the untrained eye but following subtle patterns that the Straw Hats gradually began to recognize. Nami, in particular, watched with growing comprehension, occasionally calling out course corrections to Frankie before Roger's crew even signaled them. "You're getting it," Frankie commented after a particularly smooth navigation through what had appeared to be an impassable reef. "The triangle has a language," Nami replied, her eyes never leaving the water ahead. "The way the currents interact, the temperature shifts, the color changes, they're all signals." "Signals for what?" Nami's brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm not sure yet, but I think the triangle is testing us." As the two ships penetrated deeper into the mysterious region, the chaos of the water gradually gave way to an unnatural calm. The purple-black sea became mirror-smooth, reflecting the sky so perfectly that it was difficult to discern where water ended and air began. "Look!" Chopper pointed ahead, where a dark shape was emerging from the haze that had surrounded them. An island rose from the glassy sea, unlike any they had encountered before. Instead of beaches or cliffs, the landmass appeared to be composed entirely of interlocking stone structures that extended both above and below the waterline. Ancient buildings, towers, and archways formed a city that seemed to have grown organically from the ocean floor. "What is this place?" Usopp whispered, awestruck by the impossible architecture. "No one knows for sure," Robin replied, her historian's eyes drinking in every detail. "But based on the design elements, this might be from the Void Century." "The what?" Luffy asked, perched on Sunny's figurehead for a better view. "The missing 100 years of history," Robin explained, her voice taking on the tone she reserved for archaeological discoveries. "A period the world government has systematically erased from historical record." The Oro Jackson had already reached the island, dropping anchor near what appeared to be a massive stone dock that extended from the ancient city. Roger stood at the bow, waving them forward. "Come on," Luffy urged, practically bouncing with impatience. "Let's check it out." The Sunny approached carefully, navigating between massive stone pillars that rose from the depths like the fingers of a drowning giant. As they drew alongside the Oro Jackson, Roger's crew had already disembarked and were securing their vessel to the ancient dock. "Welcome to Memoria," Roger called as the Straw Hats prepared to disembark. "The forgotten heart of the triangle." Luffy didn't wait for the gangplank, stretching his arms to launch himself onto the dock with his usual lack of ceremony. The rest of his crew followed more cautiously, eyeing the Roger pirates with a mixture of awe and wariness. The two crews stood facing each other on the ancient stones, legends and rookies, separated by generations but united by the same outlaw flag. Roger stepped forward, his presence somehow even more commanding on land than it had been at sea. "Since it seems we're after the same prize, Straw Hat, I propose a temporary alliance. At least until we're clear of the triangle." "Alliance?" Luffy repeated, head tilted curiously. "You mean work together?" "Exactly," Roger nodded. "My crew has the experience, yours has the enthusiasm. And we both have half of the map to Poseidon's Key." The mention of the map caused a ripple of reaction through both crews. Rayleigh, standing just behind Roger, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "How'd you know we have half the map?" Zoro asked suspiciously. Roger tapped his ear with a grin. "News travels fast on the sea. And I have excellent hearing." "You were spying on us," Nami accused. "Gathering intelligence," Rayleigh corrected smoothly. "A habit that's kept us alive this long." Before the argument could escalate, Robin stepped forward. "Captain Roger, what do you know about this island? These structures appear to be from the Void Century." Roger's expression shifted subtly, his eyes evaluating Robin with new interest. You recognize the architecture? Not many scholars would. Robin knows everything about old stuff, Luffy interjected proudly. She's the best archaeologist ever. Is she now? Roger exchanged a meaningful glance with Rayleigh before continuing. Then she might be particularly interested in what lies at the center of the city. There's a temple with inscriptions no one has been able to decipher, not even my crew's scholars. Robin couldn't hide her excitement at this revelation. I'd very much like to see these inscriptions. I bet you would, Roger nodded. And I'd like to see your half of the Poseidon map. Seems we can help each other. Luffy considered this for all of 2 seconds before breaking into his wide grin. Sounds fun. Let's do it. Luffy. Nami pulled him aside, lowering her voice. Are you sure about this? He's after the same treasure we are. So what? Luffy replied with his characteristic simplicity. It'll be more fun this way. And I want to see how his crew works. They're amazing. Nami sighed, recognizing the futility of arguing once Luffy had made up his mind. Fine. But we should be careful. With the alliance tentatively formed, the 2 pirate crews began organizing an expedition into the ancient city. Roger assigned his crew to different tasks, securing the ships, establishing a base camp on the dock, and preparing equipment for exploration. We've been here before, he explained to Luffy as they surveyed the ruins stretching before them. The currents of the triangle shift the island's location, but its internal layout remains consistent. The temple we want is about 2 hours' journey toward the center. 2 hours. Luffy groaned dramatically. Can't we just run straight there? Roger laughed. Impatient, aren't you? Reminds me of myself at your age. But this city has its defenses, traps and guardians that don't take kindly to rushed visitors. Guardians? Like what? You'll see, Roger replied cryptically. It's more fun if it's a surprise. As the crews prepared for the expedition, uneasy interactions gave way to cautious collaboration. Nami found herself comparing navigation notes with the Oro Jackson's navigator, a stern woman named Mira whose knowledge of Grand Line currents was unparalleled. Usopp, initially intimidated, was soon swapping sniper stories with Yasopp, another marksman from Roger's crew. Sanji gravitated toward the Oro Jackson's cook, eagerly discussing provisions for the journey. Robin, meanwhile, had engaged Rayleigh in an intense conversation about ancient languages, their heads bent over her notebook as they compared symbols and translations. Your archaeologist is exceptional, Roger commented to Luffy as they watched the crews interact. Not many can keep up with Rayleigh when it comes to the old tongues. Like I said, she's the best, Luffy replied proudly. All my crew are the best at what they do. A captain should believe that, Roger nodded approvingly. A crew is only as strong as their captain's faith in them. As the preparations neared completion, Roger gathered everyone around a rough map that Rayleigh had sketched of the ancient city. We'll take this central avenue, he explained, tracing a line with his finger. It's the most direct route, though not the safest. We'll need to move as one group until we reach the central plaza, then we can split into smaller teams to cover more ground. What kind of dangers are we looking at? Zoro asked, his hand resting casually on his swords. Stone guardians, Rayleigh answered. Animated statues that protect the inner sanctums. And the city itself sometimes rearranges. Pathways change, buildings shift. As if it's alive. That's impossible, Nami scoffed. Skopper Gaban, the powerfully built axe-wielder, shook his head. Nothing's impossible in the triangle, girl. The normal rules don't apply here. With final preparations complete, the combined expedition set off into the ancient city. The stone avenue was wide enough for 10 men to walk abreast, its surface worn smooth by countless years of exposure. On either side, buildings rose like silent sentinels, their architecture unlike anything in the modern world, with impossible angles and carvings that seemed to shift when viewed from different perspectives. Roger and Luffy naturally took the lead, their steps falling into an easy rhythm as they navigated the alien landscape. Behind them, the two crews gradually intermixed, curiosity overcoming suspicion as they faced the mysteries of Memoria together. "So," Luffy said after they'd walked in silence for a while, "what's it like being the Pirate King?" Roger glanced at him with amusement. "I never called myself that, you know. It was the world government that gave me the title, meant as an insult, I think. But you're the most famous pirate ever. You found amazing treasures and beat everyone who challenged you. Is that why you want the title?" Roger asked, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "For fame and treasure." Luffy didn't hesitate. "Nope. I want to be the freest person in the world. The Pirate King has the most freedom." Something in Roger's expression shifted, a recognition, perhaps even approval. "Freedom," he repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that's it exactly." Their conversation was interrupted when the ground beneath their feet suddenly trembled. The stone road ahead began to shift, sections rising and falling like the keys of a massive piano being played by invisible hands. "Everyone stop!" Roger commanded, his voice cutting through the startled exclamations from both crews. The road continued its unsettling transformation until what had been a straight avenue became a maze-like configuration of elevated platforms and depressed sections. "The city is changing," Rayleigh observed calmly. "It does this when it senses intruders." "But we've been here before," Crocus pointed out. "It shouldn't recognize us as hostile." Robin stepped forward, her eyes studying the pattern of the transformed road. "It's not random," she said after a moment. "Look at the arrangement of the platforms. They form symbols." She quickly sketched the pattern in her notebook, then showed it to Rayleigh. "These are the same characters we saw on the dock pillars. I think it's a message." The Dark King nodded slowly. "Or a test. The city wants to know if we can understand its language." "So what's it saying?" Luffy asked, peering at the incomprehensible symbols in Robin's notebook. Robin and Rayleigh exchanged glances before Robin answered. "It's asking for proof of our connection to the ancient promise. Whatever that means." "The map," Zoro suggested. "Maybe it's talking about the map to Poseidon's key." Roger nodded thoughtfully. "Worth a try. Let's combine our halves and see what happens." After some hesitation, Nami produced their half of the map from a waterproof case, while Rayleigh did the same with the Roger Pirates portion. Carefully, they aligned the torn edges on a flat section of stone. The effect was immediate and dramatic. As soon as the two halves connected, the parchment began to glow with a soft blue light. The road ahead responded, the elevated sections lowering until the avenue was once again passable, though now illuminated with the same blue glow that emanated from the map. "It recognized the map," Robin breathed, her historian's excitement palpable. "This confirms a connection between Memoria and Poseidon. And opens our path forward," Roger added with a satisfied nod. "The city acknowledges our right to pass." The expedition continued along the now glowing road, the ancient city's hostile demeanor seemingly transformed into welcoming guidance. The blue light spread ahead of them, marking their route through increasingly complex intersections and plazas. "This is so cool!" Luffy exclaimed, bouncing from one glowing stone to the next. "The ground is playing with us." Roger watched the younger captain's antics with barely concealed amusement. "You really do find joy in everything, don't you, Straw Hat?" "Of course. What's the point of an adventure if you don't have fun?" As they progressed deeper into the city, the architecture grew more elaborate and better preserved. Towers soared overhead, connected by delicate stone bridges that should have collapsed centuries ago but remained intact. Fountains still flowed with crystal-clear water, defying time and neglect. "This place isn't just preserved," Robin noted, her fingers tracing carvings that looked freshly made. "It's maintained. As if someone, or something, is caring for it." "The Guardians," Rayleigh confirmed. "We encountered them on our last visit." They ignore you until you attempt to remove anything from the city or damage the structures. And then? Chopper asked nervously. And then they try to remove you, Rayleigh replied matter-of-factly. Permanently. As if summoned by their discussion, a grinding sound echoed from a nearby colonnade. Stone scraped against stone as a massive figure emerged from what had appeared to be a solid wall, a statue over 12 feet tall, vaguely humanoid but with proportions that suggested it was never meant to represent a person. Its featureless head turned toward the group, empty eye sockets somehow conveying watchful attention. Nobody move, Roger cautioned quietly. They're sensitive to sudden movements. The Guardian stood motionless, evaluating them with senses no one could fathom. After a tense moment, it stepped back into the wall, the stone flowing around it like water until no trace remained. That was. Usopp swallowed hard. Terrifying. That was just a sentry, Skopper Gaban informed him grimly. The real Guardians are much bigger. The combined crews continued their journey, now moving with heightened awareness of their surroundings. The glowing path led them through a series of increasingly grand plazas until they finally emerged into a vast circular space at what appeared to be the city's center. In the middle of the plaza stood their destination, a temple unlike any other structure they'd encountered. Where the rest of the city was composed of straight lines and precise angles, the temple was organic, almost fluid in design. Its surfaces rippled like cloth in the wind, despite being made of the same ancient stone as everything else. The heart of Memoria, Roger announced, gesturing toward the undulating structure. Inside is a chamber covered in inscriptions that tell the history of the Void Century, or at least, that's what we believe. No one's been able to decipher more than fragments. Robin was already moving forward, drawn by the historian's equivalent of a siren's call. The others followed more cautiously, the combined force of both pirate crews spreading out to secure the plaza. We'll set up a perimeter, Rayleigh decided, directing members from both crews to strategic positions. The temple entrance has room for only a few people at a time anyway. I'm going in, Luffy declared, falling into step beside Robin. Me too, Roger added, joining them. I want to see if you can make more sense of it than we did, Nico Robin. The three of them approached the temple entrance, an arch that seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting slightly as if in rhythm with some giant heartbeat. Blue light from the pathway flowed up the steps and across the threshold, illuminating a narrow corridor beyond. Should be safe enough, Roger assessed, stepping through first. The Guardians never enter the temple itself. Luffy and Robin followed, with Rayleigh and Zoro close behind. The corridor opened into a circular chamber that took Robin's breath away. Every surface, walls, floor, ceiling, was covered in dense script, flowing in spirals from the center outward. The blue light spread throughout the room, causing certain symbols to glow more brightly than others. It's poneglyph script, Robin gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. But more, complete somehow. Earlier forms mixed with variations I've never seen. She moved to the nearest wall, her fingers hovering just above the surface as she began to read. This section speaks of a kingdom that spanned the entire world, united under a single banner. And here, she moved to another section, it mentions an alliance with beings from the moon. Moon people? Luffy's eyes sparkled with excitement. Ancient technology, Robin continued, moving around the chamber with increasing animation. Weapons of incredible power. 3 great disasters that threatened all life. And something called, the Empty Throne. Roger watched her with evident satisfaction. You can read it. All these years, and we could only decipher fragments. The language of the Void Century is my life's work, Robin replied, not taking her eyes from the inscriptions. But even I've never seen such a complete historical record. This is priceless. While Robin immersed herself in the ancient text, Luffy wandered the chamber restlessly, occasionally poking at symbols that caught his eye. Roger observed both of them with an enigmatic expression. Your archaeologist sees history, he commented to Luffy after a while. What do you see, Straw Hat? Luffy scratched his head. Lots of funny squiggles. But they must be super important if the world government wants to keep them secret. Roger laughed. Simple, but not wrong. The truth is dangerous to those who build their power on lies. Outside the temple, the rest of their crews maintained their watch over the plaza, an uneasy alliance born of necessity. Sanji had set up a makeshift cooking station, preparing food for both crews. Usopp was regaling younger members of Roger's crew with wildly exaggerated tales of the Straw Hats' adventures, while Frankie and the Oro Jackson's shipwright compared notes on their vessel's unique features. Inside the chamber, Robin had begun sketching key sections of the inscriptions, muttering to herself as she worked. This part describes the weapon Poseidon. It wasn't a conventional weapon at all, but some kind of pact with Sea Kings. And the key we're seeking isn't a physical key, but a... Her translation was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the entire chamber. Dust rained from the ceiling as the blue light flickered and dimmed. What was that? Luffy asked, instantly alert. Trouble, Roger replied grimly, already moving toward the exit. They emerged from the temple to find the plaza in chaos. The stone guardians had appeared in force, dozens of the massive constructs converging from all directions. But they weren't attacking the pirate crews. Instead, their attention was focused on newcomers who had somehow reached the center of the city. Marines, Zoro growled, his swords already drawn. Zephyr found a way through the triangle. But it wasn't just Zephyr's forces invading the plaza. A second group approached from another avenue, Captain Mordred's crew, their weapons drawn as they engaged both Marines and Stone Guardians in a chaotic three-way battle. How did they find this place? Rayleigh demanded, his own sword flashing as he cut down a Marine who charged toward them. They followed the glow, Robin realized, pointing to the illuminated pathway that had guided them. The city revealed itself when we combined the map halves. In the center of the Marine forces, Admiral Zephyr directed the assault with cold precision. Beside him stood the masked figure they had seen earlier, the Smoke Devil Fruit user. And with them was someone new, a slender person in a black cloak with a hood that concealed their features. CP-0, Roger identified the newcomer, his voice hardening. Government assassins. This just got more complicated. The hooded figure raised a hand, and the Marine forces parted to create a path. With deliberate steps, they approached the temple, seemingly unconcerned by the battle raging around them. Who's that? Luffy asked, dropping into a fighting stance. Agent Carice, Roger replied. One of the world government's deadliest operatives. They say she can manipulate memories and perceptions with her devil fruit power. As Carice approached, she pushed back her hood to reveal a woman's face of unsettling beauty, perfect features arranged in an expression of cold determination. Her eyes, however, were wrong somehow, too dark, too deep, like wells leading to bottomless depths. Roger, she acknowledged with a nod. And the rookie, Straw Hat Luffy. How convenient to find you both in one place. What do you want? Luffy demanded. Carice smiled, the expression never reaching those bottomless eyes. The same thing you want. The key to Poseidon. The world government has been hunting it for centuries. We can't allow pirates to claim it first. You mean you can't allow anyone to learn the truth about the Void Century, Robin countered, stepping forward. That's what you're really afraid of. Carice's gaze shifted to Robin, and her smile faltered slightly. Nico Robin. The devil child of O'Hara. I should have expected you'd be involved. The plaza had become a full-scale battlefield. Roger's crew and the Straw Hats found themselves fighting back-to-back against Marines, Mordred's pirates, and Stone Guardians that attacked anyone who damaged the ancient structures. Through it all, Carice remained unerringly calm, her attention fixed on the temple entrance. The inscriptions have revealed the location of the key, she stated with certainty. You've already translated enough, haven't you, Nico Robin? Robin's expression betrayed nothing, but Carice laughed softly. You don't need to confirm it. I can see the truth in your reaction. Even if she has, Luffy interjected, stepping between them, we're not giving anything to the world government. I'm not asking, Carice replied coldly. She raised her hands, which began to glow with an ethereal purple light. My devil fruit allows me to extract information directly from a person's mind. Memories, knowledge, secrets, all become mine. Roger moved faster than seemed possible for a man his size, placing himself beside Luffy in a defensive position. You'll have to go through both of us first. Carice's smile returned. With pleasure. What followed was unlike any battle the Straw Hats had experienced. Carice moved like a dancer, her body flowing around attacks with impossible grace. When her glowing hands made contact with anyone, pirate or marine, the victim froze momentarily, eyes wide with terror as if experiencing something beyond physical pain. She's attacking their minds, Robin realized, watching a Roger pirate collapse after Carice briefly touched his forehead. Implanting false memories or extracting real ones. Luffy and Roger coordinated their attacks instinctively, covering each other's vulnerabilities as they engaged Carice. Luffy's rubber limbs stretched to attack from unexpected angles while Roger's hockey-infused strikes forced their opponent to remain constantly mobile. She can't affect you if she can't touch you, Roger called to Luffy. Keep your distance. Around them, the battle continued to escalate. Zephyr had engaged Rayleigh in a devastating duel that was reshaping portions of the plaza with each clash. Mordred fought his way toward Roger with single-minded determination, his energy-crackling sabers cutting through stone guardians as if they were paper. The masked smoke user had created a fog of war that engulfed entire sections of the battlefield, within which screams occasionally erupted as unseen attacks found their marks. In the midst of the chaos, Robin was attempting to make her way back to the temple, a desperate plan forming in her mind. If the inscriptions truly revealed Poseidon's location, perhaps there was information that could help them end this conflict. Carice noticed her movement and broke away from her fight with the two captains, darting toward Robin with frightening speed. The historian thinks she can find an advantage, Carice called mockingly. Let me show you what happened to the last scholars who delved too deeply into forbidden knowledge. Her hands glowed brighter as she reached for Robin's face. Before she could make contact, a rubber arm wrapped around Robin's waist, yanking her away from Carice's touch. Don't you dare hurt my friends. Luffy shouted, his other arm already stretching back for a devastating punch. Carice evaded the attack, but it bought Robin enough time to reach the temple entrance. As she disappeared inside, Carice's expression darkened with genuine anger for the first time. Enough games, she hissed, reaching into her cloak to produce a small, oddly shaped object that pulsed with the same purple glow as her hands. Roger's eyes widened in recognition. Everyone down, he roared, his voice carrying across the battlefield with authority that even enemy combatants instinctively obeyed. Carice crushed the object in her hand, releasing a wave of energy that rippled outward in concentric circles. As it passed over people, they dropped to their knees, clutching their heads in agony. Only a few remained standing, those with the strongest haki, including Roger, Rayleigh, Luffy, and Zoro. What did you do? Luffy demanded, watching in horror as both friends and foes writhed in mental anguish. A taste of Poseidon's power, Carice replied. Or a fraction of it. What you seek isn't just a weapon, but a key to controlling minds on a global scale. Imagine being able to rewrite the thoughts of entire populations with a single command. That's what the world government wants it for, Roger growled, his face darkening with rare anger. To ensure no one ever questions their authority again. Inside the temple, Robin had returned to the Chamber of Inscriptions. The blue light had intensified, reacting to the energy pulse outside. Certain symbols now burned so brightly they were almost painful to look at, forming a pattern she hadn't noticed before. It's a map, she whispered to herself. Not just instructions, but a star chart showing the way to Valhalla Island. She hastily sketched the configuration, her hands steady despite the sounds of battle echoing from outside. As she worked, she became aware of a change in the chamber. The walls themselves seemed to be moving, the stone flowing like liquid to reveal a hidden recess. Within the newly exposed alcove sat a small pedestal, upon which rested a cube of the same material as the poneglyphs. Unlike the familiar stone, however, this cube was transparent, with intricate mechanisms visible inside its crystalline structure. The key, Robin breathed, reaching for it hesitantly. As her fingers made contact, the cube pulsed once with blue light. The entire temple shuddered, and Robin felt a strange sensation, as if someone had spoken directly into her mind in a language both foreign and intimately familiar. Outside, the battle paused as everyone felt the temple's reaction. The stone guardians suddenly withdrew, sinking back into the city's fabric as if summoned elsewhere. "No!" Carice shouted, realizing what was happening. She turned to Zephyr. "Destroy the temple. Now!" The admiral nodded grimly, raising a hand signal that his remaining conscious forces immediately responded to. Marines began placing explosive devices at strategic points around the temple's base. "Stop them!" Luffy ordered, launching himself toward the nearest group of saboteurs. Roger was right beside him, his sword flashing as he cut through Marines with surgical precision. Together, they cleared one side of the temple, but there were too many attackers working simultaneously. "We can't reach them all in time," Zoro called out, fighting his way through Mordred's pirates to reach another demolition team. Inside the chamber, Robin felt the temple's distress as vibrations through the floor. The voice in her mind grew more urgent, though she still couldn't understand its words. Acting on instinct, she grabbed the crystal cube and ran for the exit. As she emerged, the situation outside had deteriorated further. Marines and pirates locked in desperate combat. The smoke user's fog had engulfed half the plaza. Explosive devices counted down around the temple's perimeter. "Robin!" Luffy spotted her, fighting his way to her side. "What did you find?" She showed him the cube. "I think this is what everyone's fighting for. And there's more, I know where Valhalla Island is." Roger dispatched his opponents and joined them, his eyes widening at the sight of the cube. The cipher key, he identified it. So it was real after all. "We need to get out of here," Robin urged. "The temple is about to." The first explosions cut off her warning. Charges detonated in sequence around the temple's base, sending massive cracks racing up its undulating walls. The structure groaned like a living thing in pain. "Everyone retreat!" Roger bellowed to both crews. "Back to the ships." In the confusion, Carice appeared before them, her eyes fixed on the cube in Robin's hands. "Give me the key, and I'll let your crews escape." "Liar," Luffy accused. "We need to split up," Roger decided quickly. "Divide their forces." He turned to Luffy. "Do you trust your archaeologist?" "With my life," Luffy replied without hesitation. "Then she should take the cube. You and I will create a diversion to cover her escape." Luffy nodded, understanding immediately. "Robin, get back to the Sunny with that thing. We'll meet you there." "But Luffy, Captain's orders," he grinned. "Don't worry, I won't lose to these guys." Robin reluctantly agreed, securing the cube inside her clothing before melting into the chaos of battle, her devil fruit powers allowing her to blend with the crowd by creating decoy copies of herself. Roger turned to Luffy, a gleam of battle joy in his eyes that matched Luffy's own. Ready to show them why they shouldn't mess with the past and future pirate kings. Luffy's answering grin was fierce. "Let's do this." Together, they charged directly at Carice and Zephyr, their combined presence so overwhelming that even hardened Marines fell back in momentary awe. The plaza became the stage for a battle of legends, Roger's decades of experience complementing Luffy's raw potential in a symphony of destruction that drove their opponents back. Meanwhile, both crews began fighting their way toward their respective escape routes, carrying injured members and fending off pursuers. The temple continued to collapse behind them, each falling stone seeming to shake the entire island. Mordred, seeing his chance slipping away, abandoned his fight with Skapurgaban and made a desperate dash toward Roger, his hatred overriding tactical sense. "Roger," he screamed, sabers crackling with deadly energy. "Face me." Roger barely glanced in his direction. "Not now, whoever you are. I'm busy." The casual dismissal drove Mordred into a frenzy. He launched himself at Roger's back, blades aimed at a killing stroke. Without looking, Roger sidestepped the attack, allowing Mordred's momentum to carry him directly into Zephyr's path. The two collided, Mordred's energy blades slicing through the Admiral's reinforced coat. Zephyr roared in pain and rage, turning his attention to this new attacker. Carice, meanwhile, had realized Robin's escape with the cube and was now pursuing her through the city, leaving the two captains momentarily unchallenged. "Your archaeologist won't make it to the ships alone," Roger told Luffy. "Not with Carice after her." "Then we'd better hurry," Luffy replied, already moving in the direction Robin had taken. They raced through the disintegrating city, the blue pathway that had guided them now flickering and fading as Memoria's ancient power destabilized. Behind them, the temple collapsed entirely, sending a shockwave through the stone streets that knocked both pirates off their feet. As they regained their balance, they realized they'd been separated from the main battle, and from their crews. The city's layout had shifted again, transforming the route they'd followed earlier into an unfamiliar maze. This way, Roger decided after a moment, choosing a path that curved toward what he believed was the direction of the docks. They ran side by side through the labyrinth of ancient streets, occasionally encountering and dispatching small groups of Marines or Mordred's pirates. As they turned a corner, they came upon an unexpected sight: Robin, surrounded by stone guardians that appeared to be protecting her. "Luffy," she called out in relief. "Captain Roger." "Robin. You're okay." Luffy rushed forward, only to be blocked by a guardian that moved with surprising speed. "Wait," Robin cautioned. "They're not hostile. I think the cube is controlling them." Indeed, the crystal artifact glowed faintly through her clothing, pulsing in rhythm with subtle movements from the guardians. "The city's defenders recognize the key's authority," Roger observed. "Interesting. I've been trying to reach the ships, but the paths keep changing," Robin explained. "It's as if the city itself is in panic." "Memoria is dying," Roger said grimly. "The world government's explosives disrupted whatever ancient power sustained it all these centuries." As if to confirm his assessment, a nearby tower crumbled into dust, its matter simply dissolving rather than falling like normal stone. Throughout the city, similar disintegration was spreading like a disease. "We need to move," Roger urged. "This entire island might disappear beneath us." With the Guardians now providing an escort, they made better progress through the shifting maze. Roger's instinctive sense of direction proved invaluable as they navigated the dying city, avoiding dead ends and collapsing structures. "The cube," Robin said as they ran. "I think I understand part of its purpose now. It's not just a key to Poseidon, it's a repository of knowledge, designed to preserve the truth about the Void Century." "Knowledge is the most dangerous weapon," Roger replied. "It's why the world government fears it more than any physical threat." "Is that why you're searching for One Piece?" Luffy asked unexpectedly. "For knowledge." Roger glanced at him with a mixture of surprise and approval. "Sharper than you look, aren't you, Straw Hat?" "Yes, in part. The greatest treasure isn't gold or jewels, but truth, and the freedom it brings." Before they could discuss further, a section of road ahead of them exploded upward as Carice emerged through the stone itself, her devil fruit power apparently more versatile than they had realized. "Impressive teamwork," she commended coldly. "But this ends now." The Guardians moved to intercept her, but Carice touched each one in turn, her glowing hand somehow overriding their ancient programming. As each Guardian fell under her control, its stone form darkened from gray to black. "Even ancient defenses can't resist my power," she explained, directing her corrupted Guardians to surround the three pirates. "All minds are mine to shape." Luffy stepped forward, cracking his knuckles. "Your power doesn't work on me. I'm too stubborn." Carice actually laughed, a sound like glass breaking. Your resistance would make the victory all the sweeter. I've never encountered a mind I couldn't break. You've never met a D before, have you? Roger asked, his smile dangerous. The will of D. Curi's expression hardened. Ancient superstition. Nothing more. Let's test that theory, Roger suggested, exchanging a look with Luffy that conveyed a plan without words. They attacked simultaneously from opposite directions, forcing Curi's to divide her attention. The corrupted guardians moved to intercept, but Luffy's hockey-infused fists shattered them on impact while Roger's sword cleaved through stone as if it were cloth. Robin, meanwhile, retreated to a defensible position, using her multiple arms to fend off guardians that approached from behind. The cube continued to pulse, its light growing stronger as the battle intensified. Curi's was formidable, her physical abilities matching her mental powers. She flowed between attacks like smoke, counterstriking with precision that would have disabled lesser opponents instantly. But Roger and Luffy were anything but lesser opponents. As the fight progressed, the city's deterioration accelerated. Entire buildings vanished into dust around them, creating a surreal battlefield that constantly shifted and changed. Through it all, Curi's remained focused on a single goal, obtaining the cube. Your allies have abandoned you, she told them during a momentary pause in the fighting. The Marines have retreated. Mordred's forces as well. Even your own crews have returned to their ships. Good, Luffy replied simply. Then they're safe. And you? Curi's pressed. Do you think you'll escape this dying island? Whether we do or not, Roger answered, you won't get the cube. It's already fulfilled its purpose, revealing the location of Valhalla Island to Nico Robin. Curi's confident expression faltered slightly. You're bluffing. Am I? Roger grinned. Why don't you try to take it from her and find out? Curi's lunged toward Robin with blinding speed, her hands glowing with mental energy. Luffy intercepted, his rubber body absorbing an attack that would have incapacitated anyone else. Even so, he staggered, momentarily overwhelmed by whatever psychic assault Curi's had unleashed. Luffy! Robin called out in alarm. I'm fine, he growled, shaking his head to clear it. Just a headache. Roger used the distraction to launch his own attack, driving Curi's back with a series of strikes that demonstrated why he was considered the world's strongest pirate. Each blow contained enough force to shatter stone, yet Curi's evaded most, taking only glancing impacts that nonetheless left her gasping. You can't win, she insisted, though her confidence was clearly shaken. Even if you escape, the world government will hunt you to the ends of the earth for that cube. Let them try, Luffy replied, recovering his stance. We're used to it. The ground beneath them gave a final, violent shudder. Cracks spread outward in all directions as Memoria's ancient foundation began to fail. The remaining structures around them started dissolving at an accelerated rate, creating a rapidly expanding circle of nothingness. Time to go, Roger decided, glancing at Luffy. Think you can get your archaeologist back to your ship? Of course. Luffy replied confidently. What about you? I'll keep our friend here busy, Roger nodded toward Curi's, who was reassessing her options as the environment literally disappeared around them. Robin understood the plan immediately. Luffy, we need to hurry. The cube is reacting to the city's destruction, I don't know what will happen when Memoria completely collapses. Luffy hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave Roger to face Curi's alone. The older captain gave him a reassuring grin. Don't worry about me, Straw Hat. This isn't my first impossible situation. But, go, Roger insisted, his voice taking on the tone of absolute command that had led his crew through the world's greatest dangers. Get the cube to safety. Find Valhalla Island. That's your part in this adventure. Luffy recognized the wisdom in Roger's words. With a nod of respect, he grabbed Robin around the waist. Hold on tight. He stretched his other arm to grab a still intact tower in the distance, launching them both away from the battle just as the ground where they'd been standing dissolved into nothing. Carice moved to pursue, but Roger blocked her path, his presence like a physical barrier she couldn't bypass. "Your fight is with me," he told her, sword raised. "Let's see if your mind games work on the man they call Pirate King." As Luffy and Robin soared above the disintegrating city, they caught glimpses of the battle raging below. Roger and Carice locked in a duel that seemed to bend reality around them, two forces of nature colliding amidst the death of an ancient wonder. "Will he be okay?" Robin asked, clutching the cube that continued to pulse with increasingly bright light. "He's Roger," Luffy replied simply, as if that explained everything. And somehow, it did. They landed on a section of road that still led toward the docks, though it was rapidly crumbling at the edges. In the distance, they could see both pirate ships still moored at the ancient dock, crews visible on deck preparing for emergency departure. "Almost there," Luffy encouraged, pulling Robin along as they sprinted down the dissolving pathway. Behind them, a massive explosion of energy illuminated the city's center, Roger and Carice's battle reaching some kind of climax. The shockwave rushed outward, accelerating the city's collapse and overtaking Luffy and Robin as they ran. "Jump!" Luffy shouted, sensing rather than seeing the destruction approaching from behind. They leapt forward just as the road dissolved beneath their feet, Luffy stretching his arm once more to latch onto a distant pillar near the dock. The momentum carried them in a wide arc over the final section of the city, now little more than floating islands of stone amidst an expanding void. As they approached the ships, they could see both crews fighting to maintain position against currents that had become as chaotic as the city itself. The water around the docks churned and boiled, forming whirlpools that threatened to drag the vessels under. "Nami!" Luffy shouted as they descended toward the Sunny. "Get ready to sail." His navigator spotted them, quickly barking orders to the rest of the crew. Frankie manned the helm while Sanji and Zoro prepared to assist their landing. The Oro Jackson was similarly mobilizing, Rayleigh directing operations with the same calm authority he always displayed. Luffy and Robin crashed onto the Sunny's deck in a tumble of limbs, immediately surrounded by their concerned crewmates. "Where's Roger?" Rayleigh called across from the Oro Jackson, his usual composure slipping slightly to reveal genuine concern. "Fighting Carice," Luffy shouted back. "He told us to get the cube to safety." Rayleigh's expression was unreadable for a moment before he nodded sharply. "Then we honor his order. Prepare to depart." Both ships began maneuvering away from the dock as the last sections of Memoria dissolved into nothingness. The water grew increasingly turbulent, massive waves threatening to capsize them at any moment. "What about Roger?" Chopper asked, voicing the concern everyone felt. "He'll make it," Luffy declared with absolute conviction. "He's not dying here." As if summoned by Luffy's faith, a figure appeared at the edge of what remained of the city, Roger, running at full speed along a pathway that vanished behind him with each step. He was alone, no sign of Carice visible in the destruction behind him. "Captain," the Oro Jackson's crew shouted in unified relief. Roger sprinted across the last stretch of solid ground, then leapt with inhuman strength as it disappeared beneath him. For a heart-stopping moment, he hung suspended over the churning void that had once been the dock. Rayleigh was already in motion, extending his sword for Roger to grab. The captain caught the blade one-handed, allowing his first mate to haul him aboard just as the Oro Jackson pulled away from the last fragments of Memoria. A cheer went up from both crews as Roger regained his feet, waving to acknowledge their relief before issuing immediate orders to navigate the increasingly dangerous waters. "What happened to Carice?" Rayleigh asked, visible even from the Sunny's deck as the ships maneuvered in parallel. Roger shook his head grimly. "She's resourceful. I wouldn't count her out yet." The complete collapse of Memoria had triggered a reaction throughout the Serpent's Triangle. The strange currents were going berserk, forming impossible patterns that threatened to tear both ships apart. Even the sky above had changed, clouds swirling in mirrored reflection of the water below. "How do we get out?" Nami shouted over the roar of the elements, struggling with the Sunny's navigation controls. "The currents are completely different from when we entered." Robin, still clutching the cube, noticed it was pulsing in a distinct pattern, almost like a heartbeat, but with a rhythm that matched the chaotic movements of the water. The cube, she realized. It's responding to the triangle's changes. I think it can guide us out. She moved to the bow, holding the artifact aloft. Immediately, a beam of blue light shot from it, cutting through the turbulence ahead to indicate a navigable path. Follow that light. Luffy ordered without hesitation. Frankie adjusted course accordingly, the Sunny responding with the agility that made it special among ships. Across the water, the Oro Jackson had observed their discovery and moved to follow in their wake. The next hour was a navigator's nightmare as both ships fought their way through the collapsing triangle. The death of Memoria had destabilized the entire region, transforming already dangerous waters into a maelstrom of conflicting forces. Only the cube's guidance, and the exceptional skill of both crews, kept them from destruction. Finally, mercifully, a break appeared in the churning chaos, a stretch of normal blue ocean visible through the triangle's boundary. Both ships surged toward it with renewed determination. We're almost out. Nami called, her hand steady on the helm despite her exhaustion. Just a little farther. As the Sunny approached the boundary, a massive shadow passed beneath them, one of the triangle's guardian sea kings, larger than any they had seen before. Instead of attacking, however, it surged ahead, using its enormous body to part the chaotic waters and create a smoother path for their escape. It's helping us? Chopper wondered aloud. Robin glanced at the cube, which pulsed in rhythm with the Sea King's movements. I think the Guardian recognizes the cube's authority. The massive creature led them to the boundary, then disappeared into the depths as both pirate ships broke free of the triangle's influence. The chaos fell away behind them, replaced by the relatively calm waters of the open Grand Line. A collective sigh of relief passed through both crews as they took stock of their situation. The Sunny had sustained damage but remained seaworthy. The Oro Jackson, with its more experienced crew, had fared somewhat better. Once they had put sufficient distance between themselves and the triangle, both ships reduced speed, coming alongside each other for the first time since their escape began. Roger stood at the railing of the Oro Jackson, observing the straw hats with a mixture of assessment and approval. His gaze eventually settled on Robin, who still held the crystal cube. You have it, then, he called across the gap between ships. The cipher key. And you know where to find Valhalla Island? Robin nodded. The inscriptions in the temple revealed its location. It's in a region of the New World known as the Silent Sea. That matches our half of the Poseidon map, Rayleigh confirmed, unfolding their portion to examine it. With both halves combined, we could pinpoint it precisely. An expectant silence fell between the crews. The temporary alliance that had gotten them through the triangle had served its purpose. Now, with the prize in sight, the question of competition versus cooperation hung in the air. Luffy stepped forward to stand beside Robin. So what happens now? Are we racing to Valhalla Island, or what? Roger's expression was unreadable for a moment before breaking into a wide grin that mirrored Luffy's own. What do you think, Straw Hat? You've earned your shot at the prize. Luffy considered this seriously, his usual impulsiveness giving way to genuine reflection. He looked at Robin, who held the cube that had cost them so much to obtain. He thought about the forces arrayed against them, Zephyr, Carice, Mordred, all of whom would be regrouping for another attempt. And he considered Roger himself, the legend whose title he sought to claim. I think, Luffy said finally, that this adventure isn't over yet. And it's more fun with worthy rivals. Roger's laugh boomed across the water. Well said. To Valhalla Island, then, may the best pirate win. The challenge was issued and accepted with mutual respect rather than hostility. Both captains recognized in the other a kindred spirit, someone who valued the journey as much as the destination. As the ships prepared to part ways, Roger called out once more. One last thing, Straw Hat. Yeah. Luffy replied. Carice said something before she disappeared. Something about the cipher key. She called it, the weight of all truth, a burden that breaks most who try to bear it. Roger's expression grew unusually serious. Be careful with that cube. Knowledge has a power all its own. Luffy nodded, understanding the warning. Thanks for the help back there. And for the adventure. The adventure's just beginning, Roger replied, his customary grin returning. See you at Valhalla Island. With that, the Oro Jackson's sails filled with wind, carrying the legendary ship away on a course that would eventually lead to their shared destination. The Straw Hats watched it go with mixed emotions, respect for worthy rivals, gratitude for unexpected allies, and excitement for the challenge ahead. As the legendary vessel disappeared over the horizon, Luffy turned to his crew with the boundless enthusiasm that defined him. All right, everyone. Set course for the Silent Sea. We've got a mystery island to find. Robin carefully secured the cipher key in a padded box that Frankie had quickly constructed. As she closed the lid, she couldn't help but reflect on Roger's warning. The cube had already revealed so much, yet she sensed it contained deeper secrets still, truths that might indeed be a burden to bear. But that was a concern for another day. For now, they had a heading, a purpose, and the greatest adventure of their lives continuing to unfold before them. The race to Valhalla Island had begun. Chapter 3, Kings of the Free Sea. The Silent Sea lived up to its name. No bird circled overhead, no fish disturbed the glass-smooth surface, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath as the thousand sunny sailed deeper into this forgotten corner of the New World. The absence of sound was so complete that normal conversation felt like shouting. Nami stood at the helm, consulting their combined navigational tools, the merged halves of the Poseidon map, Robin's notes from Memoria's temple, and the eternal pose that had mysteriously activated when they entered these waters. The needle didn't point north, instead, it rotated slowly, as if searching for something hidden beyond conventional navigation. This place feels wrong, Usopp whispered, nervousness evident despite his lowered voice. Like we're being watched by the sea itself. Luffy sat cross-legged on Sunny's figurehead, unusually quiet as he gazed at the horizon. For once, his boundless energy seemed contained, focused inward as he sensed the magnitude of what lay ahead. Robin approached, the padded box containing the cipher key held carefully in her hands. The cube's activity has increased the closer we get to the coordinates. I believe it's responding to Valhalla's proximity. How much further? Luffy asked, not taking his eyes from the horizon. According to the temple inscriptions, we should see it by tomorrow morning, Robin replied. Though in these waters, conventional distance seems flexible. You mean we might get there sooner? Luffy perked up slightly. Or it might find us, she said cryptically. The crew had spent the week since escaping the Serpent's Triangle preparing for whatever awaited them at Valhalla Island. Frankie had repaired and reinforced the Sunny's battle damage, adding new defensive measures based on what they'd learned about their pursuers. Chopper had stocked his medical supplies, anticipating injuries from the confrontation they all knew was coming. Sanji had preserved and packed provisions for extended operations away from the ship. Usopp had crafted specialized ammunition for every imaginable scenario. Zoro had spent hours in meditation, honing his haki to its sharpest edge. Nami had charted and recharted their course, trying to make sense of the Silent Sea's abnormal properties, how the stars seemed to shift position overnight, how the currents moved in patterns that defied physical laws, how distances expanded and contracted unpredictably. And Robin had studied the cipher key, carefully documenting its reactions and attempting to decipher the mechanisms visible within its crystalline structure. Have you figured out how it works? Luffy asked, nodding toward the box in her hands. Not entirely, Robin admitted. But I believe it's both a key and a record, something designed to activate Poseidon while preserving the knowledge of how and why it was sealed away. And the world government wants it to control people's minds, Luffy frowned. That's not freedom. Robin smiled slightly at his simplification of a complex issue. No, it's not. Which is why we can't let them have it. Their conversation was interrupted by Zoro's voice from the crow's nest, ship approaching from the southwest. Everyone tensed, immediately assuming battle stations. After escaping the triangle, they'd managed to avoid pursuit, but all knew their enemies would converge on Valhalla Island eventually. Marines? Nami called up, already calculating evasive maneuvers. No, Zoro replied after a moment. It's the Oro Jackson. Relief and excitement rippled through the crew. Despite being technical rivals in the race for Poseidon's Key, their shared experiences in the Triangle had fostered a strange camaraderie with Roger's pirates. The legendary ship appeared on the horizon, its crimson hull vibrant against the colorless backdrop of the silent sea. As it drew nearer, they could see Roger himself standing at the bow, his coat billowing despite the still air. Straw Hat, his voice carried across the water with impossible clarity. Found it yet? Not yet. Luffy shouted back with equal enthusiasm. But we're close. The Oro Jackson adjusted course to sail parallel to the Sunny, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough for communication. A gangplank extended from the larger ship, creating a bridge between the vessels. Rayleigh crossed first, followed by Roger himself and a few key members of their crew. The Straw Hats welcomed them aboard, curious about this unexpected approach. I thought we were racing, Nami said, not bothering to hide her suspicion. Roger laughed, the sound strangely muted in the silent sea's unnatural acoustics. We were. Then we detected 3 marine battleships entering these waters yesterday. Zephyr, Luffy concluded. And that's not all, Rayleigh added grimly. Our lookout spotted Mordred's ship shadowing the Marines. Everyone's converging on Valhalla. We figured 2 pirate crews might stand a better chance working together, Roger explained, at least until we reach the island. Alliance extension? Luffy grinned, extending his hand. Roger clasped it firmly. Until we reach Poseidon's Key. After that, may the best pirate win. The 2 captains shook on it, their crews mingling once more as they shared information and prepared for the challenges ahead. Robin presented her findings on the cipher key to Rayleigh, whose centuries of experience offered new perspectives on the ancient artifact. The navigators compared notes on the Silent Sea's anomalies, while the combatants discussed strategies for dealing with their pursuers. The Marines will hit us with everything they have, Skopper Gaban predicted, his massive axes resting across his shoulders. Zephyr's not known for subtlety. And Mordred will wait for us to weaken each other before making his move, Crocus added, his medical expertise now supplemented by years of combat experience. Zoro cleaned one of his swords with methodical precision. Let them come. We've faced worse odds. Have you? Rayleigh asked with genuine curiosity. You're all so young. Age isn't everything, Zoro replied without looking up. We've been through Eni's lobby, Impel Down, Marineford. He stopped suddenly, realizing these events meant nothing to people from this era. Roger raised an eyebrow but didn't press for details. As the day progressed, the Silent Sea became even more unsettling. The water's surface developed an oily sheen that reflected distorted versions of both ships. Occasionally, ripples would spread outward from random points, as if something beneath the surface had stirred. I don't like this place, Chopper confessed, huddling close to Robin as evening approached. It feels like the ocean is, thinking. Perhaps it is, Robin mused. The ancient texts referred to Valhalla as the island of conscious water, a place where the sea itself had will and purpose. Dinner that night became an impromptu feast as both crews shared their provisions. Despite the tension of their situation, a festival atmosphere developed, pirates from different generations swapping stories and comparing experiences. The Oro Jackson's cook engaged Sanji in a friendly competition, producing dishes of such quality that Luffy declared himself unable to choose a winner after 17 helpings of each. As the celebration continued, Roger found Luffy sitting apart from the others, gazing out at the unnaturally still waters. Getting nervous, Straw Hat? The older captain asked, settling beside him. Nah, Luffy replied with a half-smile. Just thinking. You. Thinking. Now I am worried, Roger teased. Luffy laughed. It happens sometimes. I was just wondering, what you'll do if you get the key first. Roger's expression grew more serious. Depends on what it truly is. If it's a weapon that controls minds, as Curice claimed, I'd probably destroy it. Really? Luffy turned to him in surprise. Even though it might help you find One Piece. Some prices are too high, even for the greatest treasure, Roger replied. A weapon that enslaves isn't worth the freedom I'm searching for. He glanced sideways at Luffy. What about you? What would you do with it? Luffy didn't hesitate. Smash it to pieces. Roger's laughter boomed across the deck. Of course you would. You're even simpler than I thought. Hey. Luffy protested, though he was grinning too. It's not an insult, Roger assured him. The simplest answer is often the right one. Destroy the thing that threatens freedom, sounds like something I'd do. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, two men with the same dream, separated by a generation but united by a common spirit. That straw hat, Roger said eventually. It means a lot to you, doesn't it? Luffy touched the brim reflexively. It's my treasure. Shanks gave it to me when I was a kid. And I gave it to him, Roger revealed. Though it wasn't mine originally either. Really? Whose was it before? A great man named Joy Boy, Roger said softly. At least, that's what the stories say. The hat has passed from dreamer to dreamer for centuries. Luffy looked at his treasure with new wonder. I didn't know it was that special. The hat itself isn't special, Roger corrected him. It's what it represents, a promise to chase freedom, to laugh in the face of impossible odds, to never surrender your dreams. He stood, stretching his back. Get some rest, Straw Hat. Tomorrow we find Valhalla, and I suspect neither of us will sleep much after that. As Roger returned to the celebration, Luffy remained at the railing, his thoughts uncharacteristically deep as he contemplated the journey ahead and the strange connection he felt to the man whose title he sought to claim. Dawn broke over the silent sea, revealing what hadn't been there the night before, an island, massive and impossible, directly in their path. It wasn't there, Nami insisted, lowering her spyglass in disbelief. I was on watch until 3 hours ago. There was nothing but open water. Valhalla doesn't reveal itself until it's ready for visitors, Roger explained, joining the Straw Hats at the bow. And now, apparently, it's ready for us. The island defied conventional geography. A central mountain thrust upward like a spear, surrounded by concentric rings of land separated by perfectly circular canals. The outer ring appeared to be jungle, the next desert, then tundra, and finally what looked like volcanic wasteland closest to the mountain. Water flowed between these impossibly diverse ecosystems through elaborate channel systems. It's artificial, Frankie realized, his eyes wide with professional appreciation. Someone built this entire island as a machine. The ancient kingdom's final refuge, Robin whispered, the cipher key pulsing rapidly in its box as they approached. Created to preserve their legacy after the Void Century's devastation. As both ships neared the outer reef, the water around them began to move, not with waves or current, but with purpose. It rose in columns that twisted into recognizable shapes, forming words in the ancient script Robin had studied all her life. What's it saying? Luffy asked, watching the water riding hover before their ships. Robin translated, approach with truth or not at all. The false-hearted shall feed the depths. Cheery welcome, Usopp muttered. The water sculptures collapsed back into the sea, but the message was clear, Valhalla would judge their worthiness to enter. How do we prove we're true-hearted? Nami wondered aloud. Robin held up the pulsing cipher key. I believe this is our answer. It's responding to the island's presence. It may be our passport. The two crews agreed to approach together, navigating carefully through a narrow break in the reef. As their ships crossed this threshold, the silent quality of the surrounding sea vanished, replaced by normal ocean sounds, waves breaking, water flowing, even distant birds calling from the jungle shore. It's like entering another world, Chopper marveled, his sensitive ears twitching at the sudden return of noise. They anchored both ships in a natural harbor, close enough to shore for easy access but far enough to enable quick departure if necessary. Roger organized combined exploration parties, pairing members from both crews based on complementary skills. "The island is testing us," he explained as they gathered on the beach. "Valhalla's defenses are designed to separate the worthy from the unworthy. We'll need to work together to reach the central mountain. Each ring seems to present a different challenge," Robin added, studying the island structure. "And I suspect we need to cross each one to reach Poseidon's key." "Then what are we waiting for?" Luffy bounced impatiently. "Let's go." Roger grinned at his enthusiasm. "Not so fast, Straw Hat. We need a plan." While the crews might have expected resistance to Roger's structured approach, Luffy surprised them by listening attentively. His experiences since entering the Grand Line had taught him that some situations required more than just charging ahead. They divided into 3 teams, one led by Luffy with Zoro, Robin, Crocus, and several of Roger's crew, another led by Roger with Rayleigh, Nami, Sanji, and more mixed members, and a third defensive group under Skoppergaban and Frankie that would establish a secure base camp and maintain communication between the exploration teams. Remember, Roger addressed them all before they departed, Valhalla doesn't just test strength, it tests character. The ancient kingdom valued wisdom and compassion as much as power. "And be watchful," Rayleigh added. "We're not the only ones seeking entrance. Zephyr and Mordred can't be far behind." With final preparations complete, the exploration team set off toward the first challenge, the dense jungle ring that surrounded the island. From the moment they entered the tree line, the environment seemed to react to their presence. Vines shifted out of their path, then closed behind them. Flowers turned to track their movement. Even the humidity adjusted, becoming more tolerable as they progressed. "The jungle's alive," Chopper whispered, his animal senses detecting subtle changes invisible to the others. "Not just living, aware." Robin nodded, the cipher key pulsing steadily in her backpack. The ancient kingdom developed technology that blurred the line between machine and organism. This entire island may be a single, massive life form. Luffy's team took the eastern path through the jungle, while Roger's group headed west. Both would attempt to find passages to the next ring, maintaining contact through Den Mushy relays established by the base camp team. As Luffy led his group deeper into the jungle, the vegetation grew more elaborate and bizarre, trees with crystalline bark that hummed with energy, flowers that emitted light in patterns resembling language, fruits that changed color as they approached. Despite the strangeness, there was no sense of hostility, merely observation, as if the jungle was studying them as much as they studied it. "This place is incredible," Robin marveled, documenting everything she could in her notebook. Centuries isolated from the outside world, evolving according to the ancient kingdom's design. "Stay alert," Zoro cautioned, one hand resting on his swords. "Beautiful doesn't mean safe." They reached a clearing where the jungle had formed what appeared to be a deliberate arrangement, a circle of 12 stone-like trees, each carved with symbols similar to those from Memoria's temple. At the center stood a pool of water so still it resembled glass. "What is this place?" one of Roger's crew asked, a woman named Mira who specialized in navigation. Robin examined the carvings. "Some kind of testing ground. The symbols speak of revealing true nature and the water that cannot lie." Luffy approached the pool curiously. "Seems like a normal pond to me." "Careful," Crocus warned. "Valhalla's tests are rarely straightforward." Ignoring the caution, Luffy peered into the water, and jumped back with a startled yelp. "Whoa! That's not my reflection." The others gathered around the pool, each reacting with similar surprise. Instead of showing their physical appearances, the water revealed something else. For Luffy, It displayed an image of himself standing atop a mountain of challenges he'd overcome, reaching toward a distant light. For Zoro, it showed 3 swords converging on a single point of perfect mastery. Robin saw herself surrounded by books and ancient texts, finally uncovering a truth hidden for centuries. It shows our dreams, Robin realized. Our true aspirations. Or our true selves, Crocus suggested, staring at his own reflection, an image of a much younger man tending to a desperately ill patient with a mixture of determination and compassion. Mira backed away from the pool, her face pale. I don't want to look at mine anymore. The test isn't just seeing your reflection, Robin concluded after studying the surrounding symbols. It's accepting it, acknowledging your true nature, both strengths and flaws. Luffy shrugged. That's easy enough. He stepped forward again, deliberately looking into his reflection. Yep, that's me all right. I'm gonna be Pirate King. The water rippled at his declaration, then settled. One of the stone trees began to glow with blue light similar to the cipher key. Encouraged by this response, the others followed his example, facing their reflections with varying degrees of comfort. As each person acknowledged what they saw, another tree illuminated, until the entire circle glowed with pulsing blue light. The pool's surface suddenly spiraled open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. From below, light glinted off sand, the passage to the desert ring. We did it. Luffy grinned triumphantly. The first test, Robin reminded him. There will be others. Meanwhile, Roger's team had encountered their own challenge in the western jungle. They stood before an enormous wall of intertwined trees, impenetrable by normal means. Carved into the living barrier was a series of handprints, each sized for a different person. Another test, Rayleigh observed. But what does it require of us? Nami studied the arrangement. The handprints, there's exactly enough for each of us. She pointed to a small depression below each print. And look, some kind of liquid collector beneath each one. Sanji examined the carvings around the barrier. Can you read this, Rayleigh-san? The Dark King nodded slowly. Roughly translated, the price of passage is sacrifice freely given. Blood unwillingly shed opens no doors. Blood? Nami squeaked. It wants our blood. Roger approached the wall, running his hand along the strange wood. Not much, it seems. Just a token sacrifice to prove sincerity. One by one, they each placed their hands in the appropriate prints and allowed a small cut to drip blood into the collectors. As the liquid touched the wood, it was absorbed immediately, causing sections of the barrier to glow with the same blue light Luffy's team had witnessed. When the final person completed their sacrifice, the entire wall trembled, then parted down the middle like a curtain, revealing a passage that descended toward golden sand dunes. That was almost too easy, Sanji commented, lighting a cigarette. The first test usually is, Roger replied cryptically. Valhalla is just getting started. Both teams reported their progress to base camp via Den Den Mushi, then proceeded into the second ring, the desert zone. Unlike natural deserts, this one featured perfectly symmetrical dunes arranged in concentric circles, with a glass-smooth path cutting straight through to the next barrier. It's like walking through a model, Nami observed as Roger's team followed the path. Everything's too perfect. Artificial perfection, Rayleigh agreed. The ancient kingdom was obsessed with ideal forms. They had traveled about halfway through the desert ring when the attack came, not from Valhalla's defenses, but from pursuers who had managed to follow them to the island. Marines in specialized desert gear emerged from behind the dunes, weapons ready. At their center stood Admiral Zephyr, his scarred face set with grim determination. Pirates, he called out. Surrender the cipher key and you may yet leave this island alive. Roger stepped forward, placing himself between Zephyr and his companions. That's not going to happen, Admiral. You know what the world government plans to do with Poseidon. I can't allow it. You don't have the authority to allow anything, Zephyr replied coldly. The ancient weapons are too dangerous for pirates or civilians. They belong under government control. So you can weaponize them against free thought. Rayleigh challenged. We know what Cipher Pol discovered about Poseidon's true nature. Zephyr's expression hardened further. Then you understand why we can't let it fall into the wrong hands. Like yours? Roger countered. The admiral raised his hand, signaling his forces to attack. Take them. Minimal casualties, we need them to help bypass the island's defenses. The Marines charged, engaging Roger's group in battle across the pristine dunes. Despite being outnumbered, the combined pirate team fought with the coordination of a crew that had sailed together for years, Roger and Rayleigh's experience complementing Sanji's agility and Nami's tactical weather manipulation. Elsewhere in the desert ring, Luffy's team heard the commotion and changed course to assist. As they crested a massive dune, they spotted not only the battle with Zephyr's Marines but also a third group entering the desert from another jungle passage, Mordred's pirates, moving to flank both engaged parties. It's an ambush, Zoro realized. The Marines drew Roger into a fight so Mordred could catch them off guard. Then we'll surprise the surprisers, Luffy declared. Robin, use the key to protect yourself and stay back. Everyone else, with me. They charged down the dune toward the battle, Luffy stretching attacks announcing their arrival as he catapulted himself into a group of Marines attempting to circle behind Roger. Straw Hat. Roger acknowledged with a grin, parrying a Marine officer's sword. Glad you could join us. Wouldn't miss it. Luffy replied, landing beside him as they faced a new wave of attackers together. The battle expanded across the desert ring, three factions fighting for dominance while Valhalla observed in silence. Zoro found himself back-to-back with Rayleigh, their swordsmanship styles different but complementary as they cut through Marines and Mordred's pirates alike. Sanji and one of Luffy's team escorts, a Roger pirate named Jackson with similar kicking techniques, became an impromptu duo, their flaming kicks creating glass from sand wherever they struck. Robin maintained her distance as ordered, the cipher key glowing ever brighter as the conflict intensified. She noticed something concerning, the perfect dunes were beginning to shift, not from battle damage but with purpose, creating new patterns around the combatants. Everyone, she called out. The island is responding to the violence. We need to disengage. Her warning came too late. The sand beneath them suddenly liquefied, swallowing combatants from all sides indiscriminately. Pirates and Marines alike found themselves sinking, the desert floor becoming quicksand that pulled them downward with inexorable force. Don't struggle. Rayleigh shouted, remembering ancient texts about Valhalla's defenses. The more you fight, the faster you sink. Some heeded his advice, forcing themselves to relax despite the sand now reaching their chests. Others panicked, thrashing desperately and disappearing completely beneath the surface. Zephyr, ever disciplined, held himself perfectly still as the sand rose around him. Order your men to cease resistance, he called to Roger, their earlier conflict temporarily forgotten in the face of a greater threat. Roger nodded, issuing calm commands that his crew immediately obeyed. Luffy did the same for his team, while Mordred's pirates, lacking such discipline, continued to sink at an alarming rate. Robin opened the box containing the cipher key, which now pulsed with urgent light. As soon as she exposed it to the open air, the sand's liquefaction slowed, then stopped entirely. Those still on the surface found themselves able to carefully extract themselves from the trap. The key protects us, Robin explained, holding it aloft. But I don't think this pause will last long. Valhalla wants us to stop fighting on its sacred ground. Zephyr assessed the situation with a tactician's eye. Dozens of his marines had been swallowed by the sand trap, along with many of Mordred's pirates and a few from the Pirate Alliance. Those remaining stood in uneasy proximity, weapons still drawn but hesitant to resume hostilities. A temporary truce, the admiral proposed reluctantly. Until we're clear of this death trap. Agreed, Roger replied without hesitation. But the key stays with us. For now, Zephyr conceded. The three factions separated themselves, maintaining wary distances as they consolidated their surviving members. Mordred himself had escaped the quicksand and now stood with his remaining crew, his hatred for Roger evident in every rigid line of his body. "This changes nothing, Roger," he spat. "I've waited too long for revenge to be stopped by sand and superstition." "I still don't remember you," Roger replied honestly. "But if you want to continue this fight, I suggest waiting until we're off this island. Valhalla doesn't appreciate violence among visitors." "The island is alive," Robin explained to the assembled groups. "It's defending itself against what it perceives as invaders. Our best chance of survival is cooperation, at least until we reach the central mountain." "And why should we trust pirates?" Zephyr demanded. Robin held up the cipher key. "Because without this, none of us will make it past the next ring. The key is responding to the island's defenses, it's our only protection." This pragmatic argument swayed even Zephyr's disciplined mind. A fragile, three-way truce was established, with the cipher key, and by extension, Robin, at its center. They would proceed together to the next barrier, where they would reassess the situation. As they traversed the remainder of the desert ring, the three factions maintained their distance from each other, speaking only when necessary to navigate Valhalla's increasingly complex challenges. The path led them to a massive stone gateway embedded in a cliff face that marked the boundary between desert and tundra rings. The gateway was sealed, its surface covered in the now familiar ancient script. Robin and Rayleigh studied the inscriptions while the others kept watch, each group anticipating betrayal from the others. "It's another test," Robin announced after completing her translation. "This one seems to require cooperation between enemies." "What exactly does it want?" Luffy asked, eyeing Zephyr and Mordred suspiciously. Robin pointed to three distinct sections of the gateway. "Three leaders must place their hands here simultaneously, three who seek the same prize for different purposes." All eyes turned to Roger, Zephyr, and Mordred, the obvious candidates. "And if we refuse?" Mordred challenged. As if in response, the sand beneath them began to shift again, edges of the pathway crumbling away to reveal a bottomless darkness below. "I don't think refusal is an option," Nami observed nervously. The three leaders approached the gateway warily. Roger took position at the center panel, Zephyr to his right, Mordred to his left. "On three," Roger suggested. 1, 2, 3. They placed their hands on their designated sections simultaneously. The stone beneath their palms glowed blue, then white, energy spreading outward in veins that traced the inscriptions across the entire gateway. The massive doors shuddered, then swung inward, revealing a tunnel that descended into the tundra ring. "It worked!" Luffy exclaimed. "For now," Zephyr replied grimly. "This alliance remains temporary." The combined group entered the tunnel, which sloped downward at a gentle angle before opening onto a vast snowfield. Unlike the precision of the desert, the tundra ring appeared wild and chaotic, jagged ice formations thrust upward at random intervals, blizzards raged in isolated pockets, and the ground itself was unstable, cracking and refreezing continuously. "The third trial," Robin said, consulting the ancient text. "The Ring of Discord, where allies become enemies and enemies find common ground." No sooner had she finished speaking than the tunnel entrance sealed behind them, trapping them in the frozen wasteland. Simultaneously, the ground began to fragment, breaking the large group into smaller clusters separated by widening crevasses. Luffy found himself isolated with Zephyr, Robin, and one of Mordred's pirates, a woman with metallic arms who had fought them at Astertia. Roger ended up with Mordred, Sanji, and 2 marines. Other mixed groups formed across the tundra as the ice continued to separate them. "Valhalla is forcing us to cooperate with those we consider enemies," Robin realized, holding the pulsing cipher key. "This ring tests our ability to overcome prejudice and distrust." "Clever," Zephyr admitted reluctantly. "Though I still don't trust any of you." "Good," Luffy replied with surprising seriousness. "Trust is earned, not given." Let's earn it by surviving this place together. The admiral raised an eyebrow, reassessing the young pirate captain. Perhaps you're not as foolish as you appear, Straw Hat. I get that a lot, Luffy grinned. Across the fractured tundra, each group faced unique challenges, localized weather phenomena, unstable terrain, and mysterious ice creatures that emerged from frozen lakes to test their combat abilities. The only constant was the need for cooperation. Any attempt to act individually resulted in immediate, personalized consequences from the environment. Roger and Mordred found themselves forced to coordinate their movements to cross an ice bridge that collapsed behind them with each step. Despite their mutual hatred, survival instinct prevailed, and they established a grudging rhythm. You truly don't remember me, do you? Mordred asked as they navigated a particularly treacherous section. Should I? Roger replied honestly. I've made many enemies over the years. God Valley, Mordred spat. I was Rock's first mate. Roger's eyes widened slightly. Impossible. I saw the first mate die myself. You saw what remained after the explosion, Mordred corrected, his voice tight with old pain. I was thrown clear, barely alive. It took years to recover, years spent planning how I'd destroy everything you built, just as you destroyed my captain's dream. Rox wanted to enslave the world, Roger replied, not without sympathy. His dream deserved to die. And who are you to decide whose dreams live or die? Mordred challenged. Before Roger could answer, the ice bridge beneath them gave way completely. Only their coordinated jump to solid ground saved them from the abyss below. We'll settle this later, Roger promised, helping Sanji and the Marines across the gap. After we survive Valhalla. Meanwhile, Luffy's group navigated through a perpetual blizzard, following the cipher key's pulsing light as their only guide. Zephyr, despite his distrust of pirates, proved to be a valuable ally, his tactical mind identifying safe pathways through the treacherous landscape. Why do you hunt pirates so relentlessly? Luffy asked him during a brief rest in the shelter of an ice formation. What did we ever do to you? Zephyr's scarred face remained impassive. You represent chaos in a world that needs order. Every pirate claims to seek freedom, but your freedom comes at the expense of civilians caught in your wake. Not all pirates are the same, Robin interjected gently. Perhaps not, Zephyr conceded. But the system cannot differentiate. Law must be absolute, or it is meaningless. That's where you're wrong, Luffy replied simply. People aren't absolute. They're complicated. A system that treats everyone the same isn't justice, it's just convenient. The Admiral fell silent, his rigid worldview encountering an unexpected challenge from this young pirate he had dismissed as a simple-minded criminal. Their philosophical discussion was interrupted by a distant rumbling that grew rapidly closer, an avalanche, triggered by some unseen force, bearing down on their position. Run! Luffy shouted, grabbing Robin as the others bolted from their shelter. They sprinted across the unstable ice, the wall of snow gaining on them with supernatural speed. Ahead lay a narrow crevasse, too wide to jump, too deep to survive falling into. We're trapped, the metal-armed woman from Mordred's crew exclaimed. Not yet, Zephyr contradicted, assessing the situation with remarkable calm. Straw Hat, your rubber powers. Can you stretch across and anchor yourself to that ice spire? Luffy nodded, immediately understanding the plan. He stretched his arms across the gap, gripping a jagged ice formation on the far side. Now what? Now this, Zephyr replied, uncoiling a length of reinforced chain from his belt. He secured one end around Luffy's waist, the other around his own. When I give the word, contract your arms and pull us all across. Robin, hold on to me. You, he addressed Mordred's crew member, secure yourself to Robin. The avalanche was seconds away when Zephyr shouted, now. Luffy retracted his stretched arms with explosive force, yanking all four of them across the crevasse in a tangled mass of limbs just as the avalanche crashed into their former position. They landed roughly on the other side, battered but alive. Nice plan, Luffy complimented, untangling himself from the chain. Zephyr nodded curtly, but there was a new respect in his eyes. Effective teamwork, despite our differences. Similar scenes played out across the tundra as the separated groups learned to work together regardless of faction. By the time they reached the barrier to the volcanic ring, the rigid divisions between pirates, marines, and Mordred's crew had blurred significantly. This gateway was larger than the last, carved from black ice that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. As before, it bore inscriptions in the ancient language, which Robin and Rayleigh translated once all groups had reunited. "This test is different," Robin announced. "It requires sacrifice, not of blood, but of purpose. One representative from each faction must surrender their primary reason for seeking Poseidon." "What does that even mean?" Nami asked, huddled in a coat provided by one of Roger's crew. "It means," Rayleigh explained grimly, "that someone from each group must abandon their original goal for coming to Valhalla." Silence fell as everyone contemplated this requirement. For the pirates, Poseidon represented potential freedom and the truth of the Void Century. For the Marines, it was about control and preventing world destabilization. For Mordred's crew, it offered leverage for revenge against Roger. "I'll go for our side," Luffy volunteered unexpectedly. Everyone stared at him in shock, none more so than his own crew. "Luffy, what are you saying?" Zoro demanded. "Finding One Piece, becoming Pirate King, that's your dream." "I'm not giving up my dream," Luffy clarified. "I'm giving up one path to it. If Poseidon is a weapon that controls minds, I don't want it anyway. That's not the kind of Pirate King I want to be." Robin's eyes widened in understanding. "You're surrendering the advantage Poseidon might give you in your quest, not the quest itself." "Exactly," Luffy nodded. "My dream stays the same. I'm just choosing a different way to get there." Zephyr stepped forward next. "I will represent the Marines." "Admiral," one of his officers questioned. "I joined this mission to prevent a weapon of mass destruction from falling into criminal hands," Zephyr stated. "But I've seen enough of Valhalla to recognize that the ancient kingdom built these defenses for a reason. Perhaps some powers should remain sealed, even from the world government." Mordred was the last to approach, his face twisted with conflicting emotions. "I came for revenge," he acknowledged. "To use Poseidon against Roger as he used his strength against my captain." He paused, glancing at the pirate who had become his obsession. "But revenge has consumed enough of my life. I surrender it, not my hatred, but my need to act on it through these means." The three representatives placed their hands on designated sections of the Black Ice Gateway. Unlike previous barriers, this one did not glow blue but rather absorbed the darkness from around it, becoming transparent as crystal. It dissolved rather than opened, revealing the final ring, the volcanic wasteland surrounding the central mountain. Heat blasted them as they entered, a stark contrast to the freezing tundra behind. Rivers of lava flowed through channels of black rock, while ash fell from the sky like gray snow. Ahead, the central mountain loomed enormous, its peak lost in swirling clouds illuminated from within by flashes of lightning. "The final approach," Roger observed, wiping sweat from his brow. "Valhalla's last defense before the mountain itself. And likely its most dangerous," Rayleigh added. The cipher key pulsed with increasing urgency in Robin's hands, its light now constant rather than intermittent. The crystalline structure within seemed to be reconfiguring itself, mechanisms shifting into new arrangements as it responded to proximity to its destination. "The key is changing," she reported. "I believe it's preparing to interface with whatever awaits us at the mountain." "Then we'd better not keep it waiting," Roger replied, taking the lead down a path of solidified lava that cut through the burning landscape. The three factions, now working with surprising coordination, made their way across the volcanic ring. Despite the environmental challenges, they encountered no additional tests or defenses, until they reached the mountain's base. There, etched into the vertical rock face, was a doorway, not physical, but a perfect outline carved with symbols more elaborate than any they had seen before. No obvious mechanism or handle existed to open it. Now what? Mordred asked, examining the doorway. More tests. I think we've passed the tests, Robin replied, studying the inscriptions. This describes the mountain as the repository of truth, the place where Poseidon was sealed away after the Great War. So how do we get in? Luffy asked impatiently. The answer came not from Robin or Rayleigh, but from an unexpected source, Agent Carice, emerging from the volcanic landscape behind them, accompanied by a squad of CP-0 operatives in their distinctive white uniforms. You don't, she stated flatly. Not without me. Everyone whirled to face the new threat, weapons drawn despite their exhaustion from crossing Valhalla's rings. How did you get here? Zephyr demanded. These paths are impossible to navigate without the cipher key. Carice interrupted, her bottomless eyes fixed on Robin. There are other ways for those who understand Valhalla's true nature. She gestured to the elaborate door. That entrance requires 3 components to open: the key you possess, the combined blood of those who passed the trials, and the activation phrase known only to agents of my division. CP-0 has known about Valhalla all along, Robin realized. You've been suppressing information about it for centuries. Of course, Carice smiled coldly. Just as we've suppressed all dangerous knowledge from the Void Century. The world government was founded specifically to prevent another catastrophe like the one that necessitated Poseidon's creation. What exactly is Poseidon? Luffy asked, voicing the question everyone had been pondering since beginning this quest. A weapon? A person? A key? All of those and none, Carice replied cryptically. It is the ultimate safeguard, a system designed to reset human consciousness if civilization ever again approaches the brink of destruction. Reset, consciousness? Sanji repeated, horrified. A global memory wipe, Robin translated, her archaeological expertise connecting ancient fragments into a coherent whole. The power to erase specific knowledge from every living mind simultaneously. Precisely, Carice confirmed. The ancient kingdom created it as a last resort after developing technologies that proved too dangerous for humanity to control. Rather than allowing those technologies to destroy the world, they created Poseidon to selectively remove knowledge of them from human memory. And the world government wants this power to erase inconvenient truths, Roger concluded grimly. To rewrite history permanently by removing people's ability to remember it. To preserve order, Carice corrected. Imagine a world without revolutionary ideologies, without the concept of overthrowing established authority, without the chaos that freedom inevitably brings. Perfect, permanent peace. That's not peace, Luffy objected vehemently. That's just an empty shell that looks like people. Dreams and memories make us who we are. Carice gestured to her CP-0 agents, who spread out to surround the larger group. Philosophy aside, we have a stalemate. You have the key, but I have the knowledge to activate the door. Shall we cooperate one final time? The 3 faction leaders, Roger, Zephyr, and Mordred, exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between former enemies who had navigated Valhalla's trials together. We don't have much choice, Zephyr acknowledged reluctantly. But we remain vigilant, Roger added, his hand never straying far from his sword. With this uneasy agreement, they approached the mountain door together. Carice directed the placement of the cipher key in a depression at the center of the doorway, where it fit perfectly. Blue light spread from it, illuminating the surrounding symbols. Now, blood from those who completed the trials, she instructed. Roger, Luffy, and Zephyr each provided a small amount, which Carice applied to 3 points around the key. The door absorbed the offerings, symbols glowing brighter in response. And finally, the activation phrase, Carice announced. She spoke words in the ancient language, her pronunciation flawless despite the tongue being dead for centuries. The mountain face trembled. Lines of blue light spread outward from the doorway, defining a massive archway that had been invisible before. Stone melted away, revealing a tunnel that plunged deep into the mountain's heart, illuminated by the same ethereal blue glow that had guided them throughout Valhalla. "Poseidon awaits," Curry said, satisfaction evident in her voice. They entered the mountain in formation, pirates, marines, Mordred's crew, and CP-0 agents maintaining careful distances from each other. The tunnel descended at a steep angle, opening eventually into a vast chamber that defied the mountain's apparent dimensions. The space stretched further than seemed physically possible, its ceiling lost in darkness above while the walls curved away into unnatural distance. At the chamber's center stood a structure unlike anything they had ever seen, a massive crystalline tree, its branches extending in perfect symmetry, each terminating in what appeared to be a glowing fruit made of the same material as the cipher key. The memory tree, Carice identified it with reverence. Poseidon itself. Robin approached it cautiously, the cipher key pulsing frantically in response to proximity with its parent structure. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her historian's heart overwhelmed by the preservation of such ancient technology. "And deadly," Rayleigh added, recognizing the true nature of what they faced. "Each of those fruits contains targeted memory alterations that could be released globally." Carice gestured to her agents, who moved toward the tree with mechanical precision. "Secure the parameter. Prepare for extraction." "Extraction?" Zephyr questioned sharply. "That wasn't our agreement." "The agreement has served its purpose," Carice replied dismissively. CP-0 will take possession of Poseidon and transport it to Mary Geos for the Five Elders' personal control. "That's not happening," Roger stated, his voice deceptively calm as he drew his sword. Around him, both pirate crews readied for battle. Even Zephyr and his marines shifted position, placing themselves between the CP-0 agents and the memory tree. "This power belongs to no one," the Admiral declared. "Especially not those who would abuse it." Mordred laughed bitterly. "Look at us, pirates and marines united against a common enemy. The world government must truly be corrupt to accomplish that miracle." Carice assessed the unified opposition with cold calculation. Impressive solidarity. But futile. She raised her hand, revealing a small device similar to the one she had used in Memoria. "This remote connects directly to Poseidon's activation system. One command, and I can trigger a targeted memory wipe that would make each of you forget your own names, let alone your opposition to our plans." The standoff intensified as each side evaluated their options. The chamber's unnatural acoustics amplified every sound, breathing, the shifting of weapons, the soft pulsing of the memory tree's fruits. "What's to stop us from just destroying the whole thing?" Luffy asked, breaking the tense silence. "If it's too dangerous for anyone to have, why not smash it?" "Because destruction has consequences," Robin answered before Carice could. "The inscriptions I've been translating throughout our journey, they warn that Poseidon's uncontrolled destruction would trigger its emergency protocol, a complete reset of all human memory, everywhere. Civilization would effectively end, with every person reduced to their most basic instincts. Precisely why CP-0 must control it, Carice asserted. To prevent reckless actions like the one Straw Hat just suggested." The deadlock continued, neither side willing to risk precipitating disaster. In the heavy silence, the cipher key began to vibrate in Robin's hands, its pulsing growing more intense until it broke free of her grasp, floating upward toward the memory tree. "What's happening?" Nami asked, backing away. "The key is returning home," Rayleigh realized. "Completing its purpose." The crystalline cube rose to the center of the tree, where a perfect indentation awaited it. As it settled into place, the entire structure illuminated from within, branches extending further as new growth erupted from previously dormant sections. A voice filled the chamber, not spoken aloud, but projected directly into each person's mind in their native language. "The key returns. The cycle continues. Who speaks for humanity?" Everyone froze, looking at each other in confusion and awe. "I speak for the world government," Carice declared, stepping forward. "Rightful authority over all nations. Authority is not understanding, the voice replied. Who speaks with wisdom for humanity's future? Roger moved to stand beside Carice. I have sought truth across the world's oceans. I would speak, not with authority, but with hope for freedom. Freedom without responsibility breeds chaos, the voice countered. Who speaks with balance? To everyone's surprise, Luffy stepped forward. I don't know about wisdom or balance or any of that stuff, he admitted. But I know people deserve to choose their own adventures. Even if they make mistakes. Especially when they make mistakes. That's how we learn and grow. The chamber fell silent, the memory tree pulsing as if considering his words. The young one speaks with the voice of Joy Boy, the consciousness finally responded. Honesty without pretense. Optimism without naivety. Very well. Approach, bearer of the inherited will. Luffy glanced at his crew, then at Roger, who nodded encouragingly. He walked toward the tree, stopping at an inscribed circle on the floor directly before it. What now? He asked simply. Choose, the voice commanded. Poseidon offers 3 paths: preservation, destruction, or evolution. What do they mean? Preservation maintains the status quo. Poseidon remains dormant but accessible to future generations. Destruction removes this power permanently from human hands, but at great cost to accumulated knowledge. Evolution transforms Poseidon's purpose from memory control to memory preservation, an archive of truth that can never be erased, available to all who seek it. The chamber erupted in conflicting opinions. Carice vehemently advocated for preservation, arguing that future generations of the world government would need Poseidon's power. Zephyr, surprisingly, supported destruction despite the cost, believing the risk too great regardless of who controlled it. Others debated fiercely, each according to their faction's interests and beliefs. Throughout the chaos, Roger remained silent, watching Luffy with intense interest. When their eyes met across the chamber, the older captain gave an almost imperceptible nod, acknowledging that this moment belonged to the younger generation. Luffy closed his eyes, drowning out the competing voices. When he opened them again, his decision was made. Evolution, he declared firmly. Turn this weapon into something that helps people learn and remember, not forget. The choice is made, the consciousness acknowledged. Approach the central branch to complete the transformation. Straw Hat, no. Carice lunged forward, her hand raising the remote threateningly. I'll trigger a global wipe before I let you. Her movement was arrested mid-stride by an unexpected source, Admiral Zephyr, his massive hand clamping around her wrist with crushing force. Enough, he growled. I've served the government faithfully for decades, believing in justice and order. But this. He nodded toward the memory tree, this is not justice. It's tyranny. While CP-0 agents moved to engage Zephyr, Roger and Rayleigh intercepted them with blinding speed, creating a path for Luffy to reach the tree unimpeded. Go, Straw Hat. Roger called out. We'll handle this. The chamber descended into combat, 3 factions temporarily united against Cypher Pole's elite agents. Luffy sprinted toward the memory tree, reaching the central branch where a single crystalline fruit hung lower than the others, pulsing in invitation. As his hand closed around it, energy surged through his body, not painful, but overwhelming in its intensity. Visions flooded his mind, the ancient kingdom at its height, the great war that destroyed it, the creation of Poseidon as a desperate measure to prevent such destruction from recurring, and the long centuries of suppressed truth that followed. So that's how it happened, he whispered, understanding flowing through him. The fruit dissolved into pure light that spread up his arm and throughout his body before expanding outward in a shockwave that engulfed the entire chamber. Everyone froze as the wave passed through them, carrying not commands to forget but invitations to remember, truth without manipulation, history without censorship. The memory tree transformed before their eyes, its crystalline structure flowing like liquid before resolidifying in a new configuration. Where before it had been symmetrical and sterile, it now took on organic qualities, branches reaching outward in patterns that suggested growth and change rather than static preservation. Evolution path initiated, the consciousness announced. Poseidon's archive now accessible to all seeking knowledge. The age of enforced forgetting ends. The age of remembered truth begins. Carice collapsed to her knees, the remote falling useless from her hand. "Do you realize what you've done?" she whispered, horror evident in her voice. The carefully maintained order of centuries, undone in a moment. "Not undone," Robin corrected gently, approaching the transformed tree with academic wonder. "Evolved. Knowledge isn't meant to be controlled by a select few. It belongs to everyone, to use wisely or foolishly as they choose." The battle had ceased, all combatants transfixed by the tree's transformation. From its new branches, small crystalline seeds began to detach, floating upward to the chamber's unseen ceiling where they disappeared, presumably to spread throughout the world. Seeds of truth, Rayleigh identified them. The suppressed history of the Void Century, released to find those ready to receive it. "The five elders will never allow this," Zephyr stated, though his tone suggested he no longer counted himself among their loyal servants. "They won't have a choice," Roger replied, sheathing his sword as the conflict concluded without further violence. "Some tides can't be turned back once they begin to flow." Luffy rejoined his crew, seemingly unchanged by his communion with Poseidon yet somehow more centered, more assured in his purpose. "Did you see it all?" Robin asked him quietly. "The true history?" "Enough of it," Luffy nodded. "Though I think you'll understand it better than I did. There were lots of complicated parts about governments and politics that made my head hurt." Robin smiled. "I look forward to learning it properly. It seems my life's work has found its answer." As the immediate crisis resolved, attention turned to their exit from Valhalla. The mountain chamber began to reconfigure itself, pathways opening that would lead them back to the surface by a more direct route than their entry. "What happens now?" Nami asked as they prepared to depart. "With all of us, I mean. We're still technically enemies." Roger glanced at Zephyr and Mordred, then back to Luffy. "Are we?" "Valhalla has a way of changing perspectives. I can no longer serve a government that would employ such methods," Zephyr declared after a moment's reflection. "My Marines will return with me to headquarters where I will tender my resignation, and my full report on CP0's activities here." "They'll imprison you," Carice warned, her defeat evident but dignity intact as she was restrained by her former allies. "Perhaps," Zephyr acknowledged. "But some principles are worth the sacrifice." Mordred approached Roger cautiously. "My hatred hasn't vanished," he admitted. "But it has, contextualized itself. I saw truth in the visions from the tree, including what really happened at God Valley. Rox was not the hero I made him in my memory." "Few of us are heroes or villains in absolute terms," Roger replied, extending his hand. "We're just people, making choices with the understanding we have at the time." After a moment's hesitation, Mordred accepted the handshake, not forgiveness or friendship, but acknowledgement of a shared humanity that transcended their conflict. The journey back through Valhalla's rings proved remarkably straightforward compared to their entry. The island, having tested and transformed them, now offered an unimpeded path to the shore where their ships awaited. As they emerged from the jungle ring onto the beach, the three factions began their final separation. Zephyr led his marines toward their vessels anchored on the far side of the island. Mordred and his remaining crew prepared their ship for departure. The Straw Hats and Roger pirates returned to the Sunny and Oro Jackson, their temporary alliance reaching its natural conclusion. Before boarding their respective ships, Luffy and Roger stood alone on the shore, two captains with the same dream, now bound by shared experience. "So," Luffy began, uncharacteristically thoughtful. "I guess we go back to being rivals now." Roger studied him for a long moment before laughing, the full, uninhibited laugh that had made him famous across the world. "We were never really rivals, Straw Hat. Not in the way you think. But we both want to be Pirate King." "True," Roger acknowledged. But I suspect we mean different things by that title. For me, it represents the freedom to uncover the world's greatest truths. For you. For me it's about having the greatest adventure and protecting my friend's dreams, Luffy completed. Being the freest person on the sea. Exactly. We seek the same position but for different purposes. Roger placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. The world is big enough for multiple kings, each in their own era. Does this mean you're giving up? Luffy asked, confused. Roger's laugh boomed again. Never. I'll race you to Laugh Tale and One Piece with everything I have. But I recognize now that you're not trying to replace me, you're creating your own legend alongside mine. Luffy grinned, understanding dawning. Two kings, different but the same. Precisely. Roger removed his hand, his expression growing more serious. What you did in there, with Poseidon, it was the right choice. Not the easy one, or the safe one, but the right one. It's what I would have done. I know, Luffy replied simply. That's why I did it. Surprise flickered across Roger's face before settling into warm approval. You continue to impress me, Monkey D. Luffy. I look forward to seeing what kind of pirate king you become. They rejoined their respective crews, who had watched the exchange with varying degrees of curiosity. As captains and first mates conferred, both crews prepared their ships for departure. What course, Captain? Nami asked as they boarded the Sunny. Luffy looked toward the horizon, where the Grand Line stretched endlessly toward unknown adventures. Wherever the next island takes us. We've still got a treasure to find. Aboard the Oro Jackson, a similar conversation took place between Roger and Rayleigh. To Laugh Tale, the Dark King asked. Roger nodded, watching the Thousand Sunny as its crew made preparations to sail. Yes. It's time we completed our journey. But first. He raised his voice to call across to the other ship. Oi, Straw Hat. Luffy turned, his face breaking into that impossibly wide grin. Yeah. The next time we meet will be at the final island. Roger proclaimed. May the best pirate arrive first. You're on, old man. Luffy shouted back, accepting the challenge with characteristic enthusiasm. But I won't lose. Both ships raised anchor simultaneously, setting sail in different directions, the Oro Jackson toward the setting sun, the Thousand Sunny toward the dawn. As distance separated them, both captains stood at their respective bows, silhouetted against the sky, straw hat and captain's coat becoming indistinguishable at a distance. Two kings of different eras, each pursuing freedom in their own way. Both destined to leave their mark on a world transformed by their passing. Both carrying the will of D, that had shaped history since the Void Century. And on Valhalla Island, the memory tree continued its evolution, sending seeds of truth across the world to find those ready to nurture them. The age of remembered truth had begun, and nothing, not the world government, not the Marines, not even the passage of time itself, could reverse the change that had been set in motion. The silent sea resumed its quietude as both legendary ships disappeared over the horizon. But beneath the surface, currents shifted and flowed with new purpose, carrying whispers of change to distant shores where other dreamers waited, unknowing, for the adventure that would soon find them. For such is the nature of great dreams, they never truly end, but pass from one bearer to the next, evolving and growing with each generation that dares to pursue them. And in the endless blue of the Grand Line, two pirate ships sailed on, each carrying a man who would be king. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.